Authenticity. Embark on a journey into the heart of human existence, where the quest for genuine self-expression and alignment with one's true nature takes center stage. This is the profound and often misunderstood pursuit of authenticity. In a world filled with external pressures, societal expectations, and the allure of conformity, authenticity invites us to explore what it means to live in accordance with our deepest values, passions, and beliefs. At its core, authenticity is about embracing one's individuality and living a life that reflects our innermost selves, rather than adhering to the expectations imposed by others. It is a call to shed the masks we wear in various social contexts and to cultivate a sense of self that is true to our unique experiences, desires, and convictions. This pursuit is not merely about self-discovery, but also about the courage to express and embody that self in our daily lives. The concept of authenticity has roots in existentialist philosophy, particularly in the works of thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Martin Heidegger. Sartre, for instance, emphasized the importance of taking responsibility for one's choices and actions, arguing that authentic living involves acknowledging and embracing the freedom that comes with existence. Heidegger, on the other hand, explored the idea of being true to oneself in the face of societal norms and the pull of the they-self, the inauthentic mode of being where one conforms to the expectations of others. Authenticity is not a static state, but a dynamic process of self-exploration and growth. It requires ongoing reflection, self-awareness, and the willingness to challenge and evolve our understanding of who we are. This journey is fraught with challenges, as it often involves confronting our fears, insecurities, and the discomfort that comes with deviating from societal norms. Yet, it is through this process that we discover our true passions, values, and the unique contributions we can make to the world. However, the pursuit of authenticity is not without its complexities. In a rapidly changing world, the pressure to conform can be immense, and the path to authentic living can be obscured by the noise of external influences. Moreover, the quest for authenticity can sometimes lead to a preoccupation with the self that overlooks the interconnected nature of human existence. It is essential to balance the pursuit of personal authenticity with a recognition of our relationships and responsibilities to others. So, let us embrace the challenge of authenticity, not as a solitary quest for self-discovery, but as an invitation to live in alignment with our deepest values and passions. Let us ask ourselves, what does it mean to live authentically in a world filled with external pressures and expectations? How can we cultivate a sense of self that is true to our unique experiences and convictions? In the end, the pursuit of authenticity is a call to engage with the depths of human existence and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of self-expression, personal growth, and the human condition. Deontology. Imagine a courtroom where the judge is not a person but an iron law etched into the fabric of reason itself, indifferent to tears, consequences, or the trembling hands of those it condemns. This is the stark realm of deontology, the moral philosophy of duty, often misread as cold rule worship or reduced to slogans like, "Rules are rules," when in truth it is a labyrinthine inquiry into the architecture of obligation, where acts are judged not by their outcomes but by their alignment with principles as unyielding as geometry. Let us dispel the myth. Deontology is not mindless compliance but a rebellion against the chaos of moral relativism, a declaration that some truths, like justice, dignity, and the sanctity of life, are non-negotiable, even when the heavens fall. At its core lies Kant's categorical imperative, a lodestar demanding that we act only on maxims universalizable into eternal law, a test that shatters self-serving excuses like a hammer to glass. Consider the simplest dilemma. Should you lie to save a life? For the utilitarian, the answer is a calculus of pain and gain, but the deontologist halts. Lying corrupts the very possibility of truth, a foundation without which society crumbles. Yet this rigidity is not heartlessness. It is the price of integrity, the recognition that morality cannot be bartered, even for survival. Kant's maxim, "So act that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, always as an end and never merely as a means," transforms ethics into a sacrament, elevating human dignity above all else. A radical stance in a world that monetizes bodies and data. But here lurks the paradox. What if duties clash? Is saving a life by lying a betrayal of truth, or a higher duty to preserve existence? Ross's prima facie duties, a hierarchy of obligations where fidelity and beneficence wrestle, offer no easy answers, only the agony of choice, a reminder that morality is not arithmetic but art. Critics howl that deontology is a relic, blind to context. How can stealing bread to feed a starving child be wrong? Yet this misunderstands Kant's project. The imperative is not, "do not steal," but act only on maxims you could will as universal law, a subtlety lost in caricature. The true deontologist asks, what world would this act create if everyone followed it? A universe where theft is normalized dissolves trust, but so does one where children starve, a tension that demands not dogma but moral ingenuity. Modern deontology mutates in bioethics and AI. Should a self-driving car prioritize its passenger's life over pedestrians? The Kantian answer rejects utilitarian trade-offs. Humans are ends, not metrics. Yet engineers grapple with coding dignity into algorithms. Even whistleblowers channel deontology, risking ruin to uphold truth, their acts a testament to duty's grip. Yet the philosophy's shadow stretches darker. Legal systems that punish the indigent for stealing bread, or regimes that weaponize duty to enforce oppression, reveal its vulnerability to corruption. This is not deontology's failure but humanity's, a warning that principles, like swords, cut both ways. The doctrine of double effect, where unintended harms are tolerated if the act itself is moral, adds nuance. A surgeon amputating a limb to save a life does not violate do no harm, as the injury is foreseen but not willed. Yet this dances on a razor's edge, inviting casuistry's ghosts. So, is deontology a prison of absolutes or the last fortress of moral clarity? It is both. It chains us to the mast of principle while sirens of convenience sing, demanding we choose between the agony of right and the ease of compromise. In an era of fake news, environmental collapse, and AI ethics, Kant's question, "What ought I to do?" echoes louder, a rebuke to the cynicism that reduces morality to cost-benefit sheets. To embrace deontology is not to reject empathy, but to anchor it in something sturdier than sentiment, a recognition that without inviolable rules, justice becomes a marketplace, and humanity a currency. In the end, deontology is not a rulebook, but a mirror, reflecting our cowardice and courage, our willingness to let the world burn rather than betray what we are. Determinism. As one of the most debated topics in modern philosophy, this concept calls for a careful examination of the idea that every event in the universe is the result of a continuous chain of causes and effects that leaves little room for true spontaneity or unbound human creativity. And it challenges us to ask whether the choices we make are indeed our own or whether they are predetermined by factors that extend from the laws of nature to the conditions of our upbringing. And as we probe this question, we must consider if our personal experiences of decision-making are merely the outcome of complex interactions among biological, psychological, and environmental variables that obey strict natural laws. And what implications does this have for the notion of moral responsibility when every action can be traced back to an antecedent cause? And the inquiry leads us to a rigorous analysis of scientific principles such as classical mechanics, which portrays the universe as a vast mechanism operating with impeccable regularity. while at the same time modern developments in quantum theory introduce elements of uncertainty that some have interpreted as openings for randomness rather than genuine freedom. And yet even this uncertainty does not necessarily grant a license for absolute freedom, because it may simply reflect gaps in our understanding of the underlying order. And in this context, we are urged to reflect on the insights of great thinkers like Spinoza, who maintain that all that happens is the inevitable expression of a divine order or natural law, and to ask whether the perceived tension between our inner sense of free will and the rigid structure of determinism can be reconciled in a way that upholds personal dignity and accountability. And as we delve into these technical matters, we encounter the concepts of causality and probability, which require a careful philosophical and scientific treatment in order to determine if the unpredictable nuances of human behavior are truly instances of free action, or simply emergent phenomena resulting from an intricate web of prior events. And this leads us to pose further questions such as, can the deterministic order of the cosmos coexist with the subjective experience of choice? Or does our intuitive feeling of making decisions serve as an illusion that masks the deeper realities of a cause-driven universe? And when we examine the implications for ethics and legal responsibility, we must wonder if our systems of praise and blame are based on a flawed understanding of agency, or if acknowledging the role of predetermined causes might in fact lead to more compassionate and nuanced approaches to justice. And through this rigorous inquiry, we are compelled to explore whether the tension between determinism and the experience of freedom is a genuine philosophical paradox, or a challenge that encourages us to reframe our views on human nature and the structure of reality. And ultimately, the study of determinism as a misunderstood philosophical concept invites us to engage with both the empirical evidence provided by the natural sciences and the introspective insights of the human spirit in order to forge a more comprehensive understanding of our place in the universe, a quest that demands intellectual honesty and creative exploration as we continuously ask, can the orderly progression of natural events truly account for the rich diversity of human experience? Or does the interplay of cause and chance reveal a more subtle and enigmatic picture of existence that calls on us to rethink our assumptions about freedom, responsibility, and the very meaning of life? Dualism. Dualism stands as one of the most enduring yet misunderstood philosophical positions in the realm of metaphysics that seeks to delineate the relationship between the immaterial mind and the tangible body, and to inquire whether the mental life of thoughts, emotions, and consciousness exists as a distinct realm separate from the physical processes that govern our existence, or whether these two domains are intricately interwoven in a manner that defies simple categorization. And as we examine this concept, we are compelled to ask a series of challenging questions, such as, can the vibrant experiences of human introspection and subjective feeling truly be isolated from the neural networks and biochemical reactions that shape our bodily functions? Or does this perceived separation serve merely as a useful conceptual tool that assists us in navigating the complexities of our inner life and the external world? And in this pursuit, we are drawn to the seminal ideas of thinkers such as René Descartes, who famously asserted that the mind is an immaterial substance, distinct from the body, while modern developments in neuroscience have provided compelling evidence that mental phenomena arise from the physical brain, thus prompting us to reconsider whether the dualistic model offers a genuine insight into the nature of existence, or if it is simply a reflection of the limitations inherent in our language and cognitive frameworks. And as we continue our inquiry, we must delve into the technical challenges that dualism presents, particularly the problem of interaction, which asks how two ostensibly different substances can meaningfully influence one another, and does the apparent exchange between mind and body represent a true causal relationship? Or is it merely an illusion created by our inability to fully comprehend the underlying mechanisms of consciousness? And further complicating this discussion is the recognition that our understanding of both the mental and the physical has evolved significantly over time, raising the question of whether traditional dualism can be reconciled with contemporary insights from psychology and cognitive science, or if it must be revised to account for the fluid and dynamic interplay between the inner self and the material world. And as we explore these issues, we are encouraged to reflect on the broader implications of dualism for the misunderstood philosophical concepts that we have been examining in this class. For it not only challenges our assumptions about the nature of reality, but also invites us to consider how such dichotomies might shape our personal identity and ethical responsibilities. And one might ask if the dualistic separation between mind and body ultimately enhances our understanding of human creativity and moral agency, by allowing us to appreciate the unique contributions of each aspect of our being, or if it instead obscures a more integrated vision of existence that emphasizes continuity and interdependence. And as we ponder these technical and philosophical questions, we are reminded that the exploration of dualism is not merely an abstract exercise, but a deeply practical endeavor that influences how we think about education, research, and even the arts. And ultimately, the study of dualism calls upon us to embrace a spirit of inquiry that is both rigorous and imaginative, challenging us to question not only what it means to exist, but also how we might better integrate the insights of ancient wisdom with the advancements of modern science in our ongoing quest to unravel the mysteries of the human condition. Empiricism. Imagine a world where the mind is not a cathedral of innate ideas, but an empty vault, its shelves carved by the chisel of experience, a tabula rasa waiting for the senses to inscribe their chaotic poetry. This is empiricism, the most misunderstood and maligned pillar of philosophy, often reduced to a crude worship of facts, or dismissed as the enemy of imagination, when in truth it is a radical rebellion against the tyranny of ungrounded certainty. Let us begin by dismantling the myth. Empiricism is not the rejection of thought, but the insistence that knowledge, like a plant, must root itself in the soil of observation, or wither into dogma. Locke's essay concerning human understanding declared the mind a blank slate, scrubbed clean of innate truths, while Hume's treatise reduced causality to a psychological tic, a habit of expecting sunrise because it has always dawned. Yet this is not nihilism, but a call to intellectual humility. Consider the simplest claim: fire burns. To the empiricist, this is not a deduction from first principles, but a scar etched by repeated encounters with flame, a truth forged in the kiln of lived experience. But here lies the serpent in the garden. How do we move from this fire burned to all fire burns? Hume's problem of induction guts the foundation of science, exposing the leap from has been to will be as an act of faith, a wager on the uniformity of nature with no guarantee beyond animal instinct. Yet empiricism thrives in this tension, embracing uncertainty as its sacrament. Berkeley, the idealist empiricist, took the razor further. If all knowledge comes through the senses, then the material world is a cascade of perceptions, a dance of ideas sustained by divine attention. Esse est percipi, to be is to be perceived. But this radical stance, which dissolves rocks and trees into mental ephemera, is not madness. It is the logical end of taking sensation seriously, a hall of mirrors where reality becomes a collaboration between mind and cosmos. Enter Kant, the reluctant empiricist, who conceded that all knowledge begins with experience but does not arise from it alone, erecting categories like time and space as the mind's invisible scaffolding. Yet even this synthesis trembles before the modern era. The replication crisis in science, where half of psychology studies fail to reproduce, echoes Hume's warning that patterns are fickle gods, while AI's deep learning algorithms, trained on oceans of data but blind to causation, embody Bacon's idols of the marketplace, mistaking correlation for truth. Empiricism's greatest irony? It birthed the scientific method yet remains haunted by its limitations. Popper's falsificationism, the demand that theories risk disproof, is empiricism in armor. Yet quantum physics, with its particles that defy visualization, strains the sensory paradigm, forcing us to ask, can we trust instruments that extend our senses but deliver paradox? The theory-ladenness of observation whispers that even data is not pure, that the microscope and survey form are shaped by the biases of their creators, turning empiricism into a Ouroboros, eating its own tail. And what of the hard problem of consciousness? If all knowledge flows from sensation, how do we explain the inner theater of pain, joy, or the scent of rain, qualia that resist reduction to neural firings? Materialists wave this away as emergent froth, but the empiricist, loyal to experience, must stare into the abyss where subjective feeling mocks objective measure. Yet empiricism is not a corpse to mourn, but a flame to tend. It fuels the citizen scientist collecting water samples in Flint, the journalist verifying sources in an age of deepfakes, the child who learns that touch teaches what lectures cannot. It is the antidote to the dogma of alternative facts, a reminder that while senses deceive, mirages, phantom limbs, the taste of umami, they are all we have. The Vienna Circle's logical positivism, with its verification principle, tried to purge metaphysics from science, declaring meaningless any claim beyond empirical test. Yet even this project crumbled, as the principle itself could not be verified. Epistemology. Imagine standing at the edge of a labyrinth where every corridor is labeled truth, yet each path twists into mirrors that distort, invert, and multiply reality until certainty dissolves into a hall of echoes. This is the realm of epistemology, the study of knowledge, often mistaken as a dry catalog of facts when it is, in fact, a fevered interrogation of how we know anything at all. Let us begin by shattering the illusion. Epistemology is not merely the theory of knowledge, but the excavation of the mind's fragile grip on reality, a forensic dissection of belief, justification, and the specter of doubt that haunts every claim to truth. Consider the simplest question. What does it mean to know? Is knowledge justified true belief as Plato proposed? But Getier's bombshell, a farmer who correctly believes there's a sheep in the field, yet only sees a rock shaped like one, exposes the cracks in this ancient edifice, proving that even justified beliefs can be accidents of luck, leaving philosophers to scrabble for fourth conditions, fifth conditions, or to admit that knowledge is a mirage we chase across deserts of uncertainty. Now, confront the abyss of skepticism. How do you know you're not a brain in a vat, fed illusions by a malicious demon as Descartes feared? Or that the world didn't spring into existence 5 minutes ago, preloaded with false memories, as Russell mused? These are not party tricks, but scalpels slicing through the taut skin of certainty, revealing the raw nerves of a priori and a posteriori justification. The difference between knowing 2 + 2 = 4 by pure reason and knowing the sky is blue by sensory deception. Yet epistemology is not a nihilist's playground. It is the battleground where rationalism and empiricism clash like titans. Descartes' cogito, I think therefore I am, anchors knowledge in the self, a fortress against doubt, while Hume's empiricism reduces causality to a habit of the mind, a fiction woven from repeated patterns, leaving science dangling over a void of probabilistic guesswork. Kant, the great synthesizer, stitches the two together with synthetic a priori knowledge, truths both experiential and necessary, like gravity's pull. But the suture holds only if we accept that reality is filtered through the mind's categories, a prison of perception we can never escape. Here lies the rub. Is knowledge a mirror reflecting the world, or a lamp projecting our mental constructs onto the dark? Pragmatists like James and Dewey shrug. Truth is what works, a tool for survival, not a divine revelation. Yet this reduces the eureka of discovery to the grunt of a satisfied ape, ignoring the vertigo we feel when equations predict undiscovered planets or particles. And what of testimony, the fragile chain by which most knowledge reaches us? When you believe a COVID vaccine works because scientists say so, you're leaning on social epistemology, trusting institutions as gatekeepers of truth. A gamble that collapses in eras of misinformation, where deepfakes and AI-generated lies blur the line between fact and fiction. But let us not forget the elephant in the labyrinth, the Menno paradox, which asks how we can seek knowledge if we don't already know what we're looking for. A riddle that gnaws at education, AI, and the very possibility of discovery. Is learning merely recollection, as Socrates claimed, or a slow accretion of guesses, as Popper's falsificationism suggests? Modern epistemology mutates in the digital age. Algorithms curate our knowledge, trapping us in filter bubbles where confirmation bias masquerades as truth, and post-truth politics weaponizes doubt to erode the concept of objective reality. Yet epistemology's greatest gift is its insistence on humility, the recognition that every fact is a provisional island in an ocean of ignorance, that skepticism is not cynicism but the antidote to dogma. When a child asks, "How do you know the earth is round?" you glimpse epistemology in its rawest form, a demand for reasons, a refusal to accept authority blindly. So, is epistemology obsolete in an age of Google and ChatGPT? Only if you think maps are useless once you've labeled a continent. It is the compass that keeps us honest, the shadow that reminds us light exists. In the end, epistemology is not an academic exercise but a survival skill, the art of navigating a world where lies wear the face of truth, where certainty is a seductive trap, and where the quest to know, though doomed to incompletion, is the noblest rebellion against the void. To ask, "How do you know?" is to touch the edge of the human condition, fragile, curious, and perpetually unmoored. Existentialism. The concept of existentialism embodies one of the most challenging and stimulating branches of modern philosophy, because it invites us to examine in detail the notion that individual existence is not determined by external forces, but is rather a process of constant self-creation and meaning-making, a process that calls for an honest confrontation with both the possibilities and the limitations that define the human experience. And it prompts us to ask fundamental questions such as, what does it truly mean to be free? Can we achieve authenticity in a world that often appears indifferent to our inner desires? And how can we reconcile the tension between the search for order and the acceptance of chaos in our daily lives? As we delve into this field, we must consider how existentialism challenges traditional ideas about destiny and free will by asserting that existence precedes any predetermined essence, and that each individual is compelled to continuously shape his or her identity through deliberate choices and actions that reflect an inner commitment to living in full awareness of the consequences of those decisions, a perspective that transforms the act of choosing into both a creative exercise and a moral responsibility. And it is in this framework that we are invited to explore the technical aspects of philosophy, such as the intricate interplay between ontology and epistemology, which examines the nature of being and the limits of our knowledge in a manner that is both methodical and deeply intuitive. In light of these considerations, we might ask whether the rigorous analysis of the self can lead to a profound understanding of truth, or if the acknowledgement of existential anxiety, far from being a source of despair, can serve as a catalyst for personal growth and transformation. And this inquiry gains further depth when we reflect on the contributions of renowned thinkers like Sartre, who maintained that humans are condemned to be free, a statement that emphasizes the paradox of liberation and burden. Camus, who explored the confrontation with the absurd as an essential aspect of the human condition, and Kierkegaard, who argued that the individual must confront the angst of choice without the comfort of absolute guidelines. These reflections compel us to consider whether the tension between despair and hope is not merely a tragic flaw, but rather the driving force behind creativity and self-discovery, and whether the process of engaging with existential dilemmas might ultimately offer a new pathway for understanding the multifaceted nature of reality, a question that resonates with both scientific inquiry and artistic expression. Moreover, the exploration of existentialism encourages us to examine how modern society, with its rapid technological advancements and evolving cultural norms, influences our understanding of what it means to live authentically, and it leads us to wonder if the struggle to define our purpose in an ever-changing environment is the highest form of intellectual and emotional art, an art that transforms uncertainty into opportunity and challenges us to become active participants in the ongoing construction of our identity. A process that demands not only critical analysis, but also a willingness to embrace the mysterious and unpredictable aspects of existence. And ultimately, the study of existentialism offers a rich and compelling framework for navigating the complexities of life, urging each of us to face the inherent ambiguities of our existence with both courage and curiosity, while continually asking the vital questions that shape the human spirit. Existential dread. Venture into the depths of human consciousness, where the stark realization of our own finitude and the search for meaning collide. This is the unsettling and often misunderstood realm of existential dread. This profound sense of unease arises from the awareness of our mortality, the apparent meaninglessness of existence, and the burden of freedom that accompanies our choices. It is a confrontation with the raw, unfiltered truth of being, stripped of comforting illusions and certainties. At its core, existential dread is a response to the fundamental questions of existence. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? What happens after death? These questions, often left unanswered, can evoke a sense of anxiety and despair as we grapple with the seeming absurdity of our existence. This dread is not merely a fleeting emotion, but a profound existential crisis that challenges our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. The concept of existential dread is deeply rooted in existentialist philosophy, which emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries. Thinkers such as Søren Kierkegaard, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Jean-Paul Sartre explored the human condition in the face of an indifferent universe. Kierkegaard, for instance, delved into the anxiety that arises from the infinite possibilities of existence and the necessity of making choices without absolute guidance. Nietzsche famously declared the death of God, signifying the loss of absolute values and the need for individuals to create their own meaning in a godless world. Sartre, meanwhile, emphasized the burden of freedom and the responsibility that comes with it, suggesting that our actions define us in the absence of predetermined purpose. Existential dread is not a passive state, but an active confrontation with the realities of existence. It invites us to question the foundations of our beliefs, values, and the narratives that shape our lives. This process, though unsettling, can be transformative, leading to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. It challenges us to embrace the uncertainty and ambiguity of life, to create meaning where none is given, and to forge our own paths in the face of existential angst. However, the experience of existential dread is not without its challenges. It can be overwhelming, leading to feelings of despair, isolation, and a sense of being adrift in a meaningless universe. Yet, it is through this confrontation that we can discover the resilience and creativity that lie within us. By acknowledging and engaging with our dread, we can cultivate a sense of authenticity, purpose, and a deeper appreciation for the fleeting beauty of existence. So, let us embrace the challenge of existential dread, not as a descent into despair, but as an invitation to explore the depths of human existence and to question the profound mysteries of being. Let us ask ourselves, how do we find meaning in a seemingly meaningless world? How can we confront our finitude with courage and authenticity? In the end, existential dread is a call to engage with the raw truth of existence and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of meaning, mortality, and the human free will. The concept of free will stands as one of the most intriguing and misunderstood ideas in philosophical inquiry because it challenges the notion that our actions are entirely predetermined by an unbroken chain of cause and effect, and invites us to reflect on the possibility that each individual may exercise genuine autonomy in the construction of a self-defined destiny. And this thought leads us to ask profound questions such as, can free will exist in a universe where every event is linked to preceding causes? Is the experience of choice merely a byproduct of intricate neural activity? And how do we reconcile the subjective feeling of freedom with the rigorous observations of scientific determinism? As we delve into these questions, we engage with technical dimensions that span neuroscience, ethics, and quantum theory, in order to uncover the layers of complexity that surround the notion of free will. And it becomes imperative to analyze the competing views of determinism and libertarian freedom. For determinists assert that every human decision is the inevitable outcome of prior states of affairs, while supporters of free will contend that there exists an irreducible space for genuine decision-making that transcends the simple chain of causality. A debate enriched by the insights of both classical philosophers and modern scientists who have examined the phenomenon through empirical research and meticulous logical reasoning. Furthermore, we must ask whether the apparent randomness in certain physical systems might leave room for the exercise of free will, and if the subjective experience of deliberation and moral responsibility can be accounted for solely by biological processes, or whether it points to a deeper aspect of human consciousness that resists complete scientific reduction. And this inquiry directs our attention to technical frameworks such as epistemology and metaphysics that investigate the nature of knowledge and reality, compelling us to question if our perceptions of freedom are reliable indicators of an inner capacity for self-determination or simply emergent properties of complex physical interactions. In addition, the role of free will in ethical discourse demands our scrutiny, because if human beings are truly free in their choices, then the attribution of moral responsibility gains a solid foundation. Yet if our actions are entirely the products of causal necessity, then the basis for praise and blame may require a fundamental reevaluation. And this tension invites us to explore the intricate interplay between subjective experience and objective explanation while considering whether the process of decision-making, even if influenced by factors beyond our control, can still serve as a catalyst for personal growth and creative innovation. As we reflect on these issues, we are led to wonder if the journey toward understanding free will is not only a technical challenge but also a call for deep self-reflection. A quest that compels us to embrace the mystery of our own minds and to challenge conventional wisdom with both skepticism and wonder. And in doing so, we find that the debate over free will is not a mere abstract puzzle, but a vital inquiry that shapes our notions of agency, moral accountability, and the very meaning of human existence. A subject that remains at the heart of misunderstood philosophical concepts and continues to inspire new approaches in philosophy, science, and art as we strive to navigate the complexities of our choices in a universe that is at once determined by natural law and illuminated by the possibility of true freedom. The happiness paradox. Imagine chasing a shadow. The faster you run, the farther it retreats, until exhaustion replaces hope. This is the happiness paradox. The more you pursue joy as a goal, the more it eludes you, a cruel trick of the mind where intention becomes its own obstacle. Philosophers like Bishop Butler warned that happiness cannot be hunted directly. It is not a trophy to be won, but a byproduct of particular passions. Those moments when you lose yourself in painting, hiking, or helping a friend, forgetting to ask, "Am I happy?" Modern psychology confirms this. Studies show that people who prioritize happiness often feel lonelier and less satisfied, their self-scrutiny amplifying anxiety instead of joy. The Easterlin paradox adds another layer. Beyond a basic income, wealth fails to boost happiness as humans adapt to luxury and fixate on new desires, trapped in a cycle of comparison and discontent. Social media exacerbates this, presenting curated snapshots of perfection that make ordinary lives seem drab. Yet the paradox holds a key. Happiness thrives in the present, not the future. Flow states, immersive activities like writing or playing music, redirect focus from self-evaluation to pure engagement, while relationships and acts of kindness anchor joy in connection, not conquest. Even suffering, when accepted as part of life's rhythm, deepens resilience and meaning. The lesson is clear. Happiness is not a destination, but a way of traveling, a fleeting guest that arrives unannounced when you stop chasing it. As Seneca said, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. To embrace this is to trade the exhausting pursuit of joy for the quiet art of living, a shift that transforms the paradox from a trap into a revelation. Hedonism. In exploring the idea that the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain constitute the highest aims of human existence, we are led to examine a doctrine that is both enticing and often misinterpreted, and it is worth asking whether the simple accumulation of sensory delights truly fulfills the deeper human yearning for meaning, or if a more refined appreciation of pleasure calls for an understanding that transcends mere physical gratification, to embrace intellectual, artistic, and emotional dimensions. And as we delve into this inquiry, we are reminded of the ancient teachings of Epicurus and Aristippus, who each offered distinct visions of a life governed by pleasure, yet cautioned against the perils of excess and the inevitable suffering that follows when desires are left unchecked. A balance that prompts the question, can we achieve true happiness by following our impulses without considering the long-term consequences? Or must we temper our quests for pleasure with wisdom and self-reflection? And when we turn to modern scientific research, we find that neuroscience has begun to unravel the intricate workings of the brain's reward systems, where chemical messengers such as dopamine and serotonin play pivotal roles in shaping our experiences of joy and contentment. A discovery that challenges us to ask if our inner feelings of pleasure are solely the result of biological processes, or if they hint at an aspect of human experience that remains beyond the realm of empirical measurement. And further, we are compelled to examine the ethical implications of hedonism in a society where the emphasis on individual gratification sometimes conflicts with the needs of the community, raising the issue of whether the maximization of pleasure for one person can be reconciled with the pursuit of justice and the well-being of others. And this leads us to explore technical discussions in value theory, where pleasure is regarded as a quantifiable parameter that interacts with ideas of risk and reward, cost and benefit, and where philosophers have sought to articulate a framework in which the highest good is not simply an ephemeral state, but a lasting condition achieved through balanced and thoughtful living. And it is also important to consider the cultural dimensions of hedonism, for what is deemed pleasurable in one society may be regarded with suspicion in another, thereby encouraging us to ask if there exists a universal standard of pleasure, or if our concepts of enjoyment are deeply influenced by historical and social contexts. And as we continue this exploration, we must not overlook the possibility that the modern era, with its rapid technological progress and relentless consumer culture, has transformed the very nature of pleasure into a commodity to be acquired, rather than an experience to be savored, a trend that raises profound questions about whether the pursuit of material comforts and instant gratification can ever truly satisfy the human spirit, or if such a pursuit leads instead to an endless cycle of desire and discontent. And ultimately, the study of hedonism as a philosophical concept challenges us to reconsider what it means to live a good life, urging us to integrate insights from ancient wisdom with contemporary scientific findings and ethical deliberations, so that we may strive not only for the fleeting satisfaction of our senses, but for a richer, more enduring state of fulfillment that nourishes both the body and the mind. A quest that remains as relevant in our modern world as it was in the sunlit gardens of ancient academies where the seeds of these ideas were first planted. Idealism. Imagine a world where the very fabric of existence is woven not from tangible threads, but from the ethereal tapestry of ideas, where the mind is not merely a spectator but the architect of reality itself. This is the profound and often misunderstood realm of idealism, a philosophical concept that dares to question the primacy of the material world. Picture, if you will, a grand library where every book, every page, every word is a construct of thought, and the act of reading is the act of creation itself. This is the essence of idealism, which posits that our perceptions, our consciousness, and our ideas are the fundamental building blocks of reality, not mere reflections of it. Yet, idealism is frequently misconstrued as a denial of the physical world, a retreat into solipsism, or a disregard for empirical evidence. Far from it, idealism invites us to explore the depths of our cognitive faculties, to understand that the world we perceive is inextricably linked to the perceiver. One of the most illustrious proponents of this philosophy, George Berkeley, famously declared esse est percipi, to be is to be perceived, suggesting that objects exist only in the mind of the observer. This is not to say that the physical world is an illusion, but rather that our understanding of it is filtered through the lens of our consciousness. Consider the allegory of Plato's cave, where prisoners mistake shadows for reality. Idealism urges us to question whether our perceptions are mere shadows of a deeper, more profound truth. In the modern context, idealism resonates with the burgeoning fields of artificial intelligence and virtual realities, where the boundaries between the physical and the digital are increasingly blurred. It compels us to ponder whether our minds could, in some distant future, create realities as vivid and tangible as the one we inhabit. Yet, idealism is not without its critics, who argue that it leads to a form of subjectivism that undermines objective truth. But perhaps this is the very point. Idealism challenges us to confront the limits of our knowledge, to acknowledge that our reality is, to some extent, a construct of our own making. It is a rebellion against the notion that the material world is the sole arbiter of truth, a declaration that consciousness plays an active role in shaping our existence. So, let us embrace the mystery of idealism, not as a rejection of the physical world, but as an invitation to explore the profound depths of our minds and the limits of our perception. For in doing so, we may uncover truths that have long been hidden in the shadows of misunderstanding. Identity and self. Embark on a journey into the labyrinth of human existence, where the quest for understanding who we are leads us through the intricate landscapes of memory, consciousness, and personal narrative. This is the profound and often misunderstood exploration of identity and self. At the heart of this inquiry lies the fundamental question of what constitutes our sense of self, and how this identity is shaped, maintained, and transformed over time. The concept of identity and self is not merely a philosophical abstraction, but a deeply personal and existential quest. It invites us to delve into the core of our being, to question the foundations of our personal narratives, and to explore the dynamic interplay between our inner world and the external influences that shape us. Philosophers, psychologists, and thinkers across various disciplines have grappled with the complexities of identity, each offering unique insights into the nature of selfhood. John Locke, the 17th century philosopher, proposed that personal identity is rooted in the continuity of consciousness and memory. According to Locke, What makes us the same person over time is not the persistence of a physical substance, but the unbroken thread of our conscious experiences. This view suggests that our identity is fundamentally tied to our subjective inner life, and that the self is a narrative constructed from our memories and perceptions. In contrast, David Hume, the 18th century Scottish philosopher, argued that the self is not a singular, unified entity, but a bundle of perceptions, constantly changing and evolving. Hume's perspective challenges the notion of a stable, enduring self, instead positing that our identity is a fluid and dynamic process, shaped by the ever-changing stream of our experiences. The exploration of identity and self also intersects with contemporary psychological theories, such as Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Erikson proposed that identity formation is a lifelong process, influenced by cultural, social, and personal factors. His work highlights the importance of crisis and resolution in shaping our sense of self, suggesting that identity is not a fixed entity but a dynamic and evolving narrative. Moreover, the concept of identity and self is deeply intertwined with social and cultural contexts. Our sense of self is not formed in isolation, but is shaped by our interactions with others, our cultural background, and the societal norms and expectations that surround us. This invites us to consider how our identities are influenced by the communities we belong to, the roles we play, and the values we embrace. So, let us embrace the challenge of exploring identity and self, not as a quest for a fixed and unchanging essence, but as an invitation to delve into the dynamic and evolving narrative of our existence. Let us ask ourselves, what experiences, memories, and values shape our sense of self? How do our interactions with others and our cultural contexts influence our identity? In the end, the exploration of identity and self is a journey into the heart of human existence, a quest to understand the complex and ever-changing nature of who we are. Materialism. Delve into a philosophical landscape where the tangible and the measurable reign supreme, where the essence of reality is believed to reside solely in the physical world. This is the realm of materialism, a perspective that posits that all phenomena, including consciousness and mental states, are ultimately reducible to material interactions. This view challenges us to reconsider our understanding of existence, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. At its core, materialism asserts that the universe is fundamentally composed of matter and energy, governed by the laws of physics. This stance rejects the notion of immaterial substances or supernatural forces, instead positing that everything from the workings of the cosmos to the intricacies of human thought can be explained through physical processes. This philosophical position is not merely a scientific hypothesis, but a profound exploration of what it means to exist in a material world. The roots of materialism can be traced back to ancient Greek philosophers like Democritus and Epicurus, who propose that the world is made up of indivisible atoms moving in a void. This early atomism laid the groundwork for a view of reality that is mechanistic and deterministic, where complex phenomena emerge from the interactions of simpler components. In the modern era, materialism has evolved to encompass a wide range of scientific and philosophical disciplines, from neuroscience to quantum physics, each contributing to our understanding of the material world. Materialism invites us to question the nature of consciousness and the mind. If all phenomena are reducible to physical processes, then what are the implications for our subjective experiences, thoughts, and emotions? This perspective challenges the dualistic view that separates mind and body, instead suggesting that consciousness is an emergent property of complex neural activity. This idea, known as physicalism, proposes that mental states are either identical to or somehow constituted by physical states of the brain. However, Materialism is not without its critics. Some argue that it fails to account for the qualitative aspects of conscious experience, often referred to as qualia. How can the subjective feeling of pain or the experience of seeing the color red be reduced to mere physical processes? This hard problem of consciousness remains a contentious issue in the debate between materialists and those who advocate for non-physical explanations of the mind. Moreover, materialism intersects with ethical and existential questions. If our actions and thoughts are merely the result of physical processes, what does this mean for free will and moral responsibility? Does a materialist worldview leave room for meaning and purpose? Or are these concepts merely illusions created by our brains? These questions invite us to explore the depths of human existence and to consider the implications of a purely physical understanding of reality. So, let us embrace the challenge of materialism, not as a reductive denial of the richness of human experience, but as an invitation to explore the profound complexities of the physical world. Let us ask ourselves, how do we reconcile our subjective experiences with a materialist view of reality? What are the implications of materialism for our understanding of consciousness, free will, and the nature of existence? In the end, materialism is a call to engage with the mysteries of the physical world and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of science, philosophy, and human experience.
Metaphysics. Imagine, if you will, a mirror. Not one that reflects your face, but one that fractures into infinite shards, each fragment revealing a different facet of existence. The nature of time, the essence of consciousness, the paradox of free will, the shadow dance between being and nothingness. This is metaphysics, the most misunderstood and maligned branch of philosophy, often dismissed as abstract navel-gazing or conflated with the occult, when in truth it is the skeleton key to every question that gnaws at the human condition. Let us begin by dismantling the myth. Metaphysics is not the study of beyond physics in some mystical sense, but the interrogation of reality's first principles, the invisible scaffolding that holds up the world you think you know. Aristotle coined the term ta meta ta physica, after the physics. But this after is not a sequence in time. It is a descent into the subterranean layers of reality, where physics, stripped of its equations, becomes a child's puzzle. Consider the simplest question. What is a thing? A rock, a thought, a dream. Each seems obvious until you peel back the layers. Is a rock merely its atoms, or is it something more than the sum of its parts? Does a thought exist in the brain, or does the brain merely mediate it, like a radio tuning into a signal? Here, metaphysics collides with the problem of universals. Are categories like beauty or justice real entities or linguistic conveniences? Plato argued for eternal forms. Nietzsche called them lies. But this is not mere semantics. It shapes how we legislate, love, and lament. Now pivot to the grandest puzzle. Why is there something rather than nothing? Science traces the universe to a singularity, but metaphysics asks why the singularity was, and why it obeyed laws that permitted stars, planets, and philosophers. This is the principle of sufficient reason, Leibniz's demand that every fact have an explanation, which Heidegger later weaponized to declare, why are there beings at all instead of nothing? A question that guts theology and physics alike. Yet metaphysics is not a passive observer. It invades your daily life. When you argue about fate versus free will, you are reenacting the determinism debate. Is every choice a domino falling from the Big Bang? Or do we carve paths in a garden of forking possibilities? Compatibilists like Hume twist the knot tighter, insisting freedom and determinism coexist, while Kant's noumenal self lurks in a realm beyond causality, a ghost in the machine. But let us confront the greatest misunderstanding. that metaphysics is obsolete, rendered irrelevant by science. This is a lie. Science tells us how the world works. Metaphysics asks why it exists and what it means. When quantum physics stumbles into paradox, particles that are waves, cats both dead and alive, it is metaphysics that dares to ask, is reality fundamentally probabilistic, or is our uncertainty a symptom of limited perception? Even the many worlds interpretation is a metaphysical stance, a wager on the nature of existence. And what of consciousness, that flickering light in the dark? Materialists reduce it to neural firings, but the hard problem of consciousness, articulated by Chalmers, remains: why does metabolism in meat feel like anything? Panpsychists whisper that consciousness is cosmic dust, present in atoms. Idealists like Berkeley counter that the material world is a dream in the mind of God. Here, metaphysics becomes a mirror, reflecting our terror of being alone in a silent universe. Now consider time, the river that drowns us all. Is time real, or a human hallucination? McTaggart's A series and B series split time into flowing moments versus a static block, while Einstein's relativity merges time with space into a frozen four-dimensional loaf. Yet we feel time's flow, a paradox Husserl called the living present. Metaphysics does not solve this. It amplifies the mystery, forcing us to live in the question. Let us not forget the elephant in the lecture hall: ontology, the study of what exists. Is existence a property things hold or a brute fact? Quine said, "To be is to be the value of a variable, a logician's evasion," while Heidegger's Dasein, being there, anchors existence in the agony of choice. Even nothingness, that existential abyss, is a metaphysical riddle. Can nothing exist, or is it merely the absence of something? Sartre's Being and Nothingness ties this to human freedom. We are condemned to fill the void with meaning. But metaphysics is not all gloom, it is also a subversive art. Derrida's deconstruction unmasked the hidden hierarchies in our concepts: presence over absence, speech over writing, while Deleuze's rhizomes celebrated chaos over order. Yet the heart of metaphysics remains the same: to ask what the world is and why it thrills and crushes us. So, is metaphysics useless?
Monism. Monism stands as one of the most compelling and frequently misunderstood philosophical viewpoints in the realm of metaphysics that challenges us to see beyond the apparent diversity of existence and to ask whether the multiplicity we observe in nature is truly a manifestation of separate substances or merely an illusion masking an underlying unity. And as we embark on this inquiry, we must ask whether every element of the cosmos, from the smallest particle to the vast expanse of galaxies, shares a common essence, or if the diversity we experience is a genuine reflection of multiple realities. And in doing so, we are invited to examine the technical implications of a monistic framework, which asserts that all that exists is composed of one fundamental substance or principle, whether that substance is conceived as material or as an all-embracing spiritual reality. And this perspective compels us to question if the divisions we make between mind and body, subject and object, and even between self and other, are simply constructs of our limited human perception, rather than accurate depictions of the natural order. And as we consider the ideas of thinkers such as Baruch Spinoza, who proposed that nature and God are one and the same, and ancient Eastern philosophies that speak of an inherent oneness in the cosmos, we are led to wonder whether our conventional methods of categorization, which serve to simplify and compartmentalize our experiences, inadvertently obscure the interconnected nature of all things. And in this context, we must ask if the latest insights from quantum physics and cosmology, which reveal phenomena that challenge the classical view of isolated objects, provide empirical support for the notion that reality is fundamentally unified, or if they instead point to a more complex structure that requires new conceptual tools for its comprehension.
And as we explore these technical challenges, we are confronted with the question of whether the emergence of complex systems in fields such as biology and psychology is a demonstration of an inherent unity underlying apparent diversity, or if it signifies the spontaneous generation of new forms that defy reduction to a single substance. And furthermore, we are prompted to inquire if our sense of individuality, so central to our everyday experience, is an authentic aspect of our being, or merely a perceptual artifact that arises from our inability to grasp the totality of a seamless and indivisible reality. And as we navigate these intricate debates, we come to appreciate that the study of monism is not simply an abstract philosophical exercise, but a vibrant and evolving dialogue that bridges scientific inquiry with profound existential questions, urging us to reconsider the foundations of our knowledge and the assumptions that underpin our understanding of what it means to exist. And ultimately, the exploration of monism as a misunderstood philosophical concept invites us to transcend the superficial divisions of the material world, to embrace a more holistic vision of reality, and to engage in a continuous quest for truth that enriches our intellectual lives and deepens our appreciation for the subtle interplay between unity and diversity in every aspect of the cosmos. Moral relativism. This concept is a philosophical stance that questions the existence of universal moral standards and contends that the truth about what is right and wrong is deeply rooted in the cultural, historical, and personal context in which judgments are made. And it invites us to consider whether moral values are fixed or if they shift in response to the evolving beliefs and practices of diverse communities, leading us to ask, can we claim any objective measure of goodness when each society crafts its own ethical code based on unique experiences and traditions? Or does the absence of absolute moral benchmarks challenge us to rethink the very nature of ethical responsibility in a complex and interconnected world? As we delve into this inquiry, we encounter technical questions in meta-ethics and normative theory that require us to analyze how language, emotion, and reason interact to form the moral narratives that govern human behavior. And we must examine whether empirical research in fields such as evolutionary biology and social psychology supports the idea that our ethical predispositions emerge from adaptive processes rather than from any transcendent authority. And further, we are compelled to explore the writings of influential thinkers who have contributed to the discourse on moral relativism, such as Nietzsche, who questioned the authority of traditional moral frameworks and argued that the values imposed by society often serve to suppress individual creativity and the pursuit of authentic existence, prompting us to ask if moral relativism is merely an expression of nihilism or a more sophisticated recognition of the plurality of human experience that encourages dialogue and understanding across cultural divides. In this regard, we must also consider the impact of globalization and technological advancement on the evolution of moral thought. For in a world where communication transcends geographical boundaries and diverse value systems intersect more frequently than ever before, the idea that morality is relative becomes not only a theoretical proposition but also a practical challenge to our conventional notions of justice and human rights. And it is in this dynamic environment that technical analysis of language, symbolism, and discourse reveals the subtle ways in which power structures and social institutions influence ethical beliefs, thereby raising further questions such as, how do we establish common ground for moral debate when the criteria for what is considered right or wrong differ so dramatically? And can the acknowledgement of moral diversity lead to a more inclusive and empathetic society that respects the uniqueness of each cultural perspective? Moreover, by confronting the implications of moral relativism, we are invited to engage in a reflective process that scrutinizes the foundations of our own ethical commitments, challenging us to determine whether the search for universal moral principles is an unattainable ideal or a necessary aspiration in our quest for a coherent and just social order. And as we explore these dimensions, we must consider whether a relativistic approach to ethics undermines the possibility of holding individuals accountable for their actions, or if it instead opens the door to a more nuanced understanding of moral responsibility that embraces the complexities of human life. Ultimately, the study of moral relativism as a misunderstood philosophical concept not only enriches our theoretical grasp of ethical phenomena, but also serves as a catalyst for practical inquiry into how we navigate the delicate balance between respecting cultural diversity and striving for universal standards that promote human flourishing in an ever-changing world.
Nihilism. The philosophical stance of nihilism represents an inquiry into the absence of inherent meaning in the universe and challenges the presuppositions that underlie traditional conceptions of purpose and value, inviting us to question whether objective morality and absolute truths can exist in a realm where all constructs are human inventions subject to constant revision, and this critical view has often been misinterpreted as a call for despair and the abandonment of all commitments, even though a more nuanced analysis reveals that nihilism urges us to examine the foundations of our beliefs and to consider whether the social and cultural frameworks we depend on are merely provisional constructs designed to offer comfort in a chaotic world. And as we explore these ideas, we are compelled to ask intriguing questions such as, can the recognition of meaninglessness serve as a catalyst for creative freedom instead of a descent into apathy? Or does it force us to confront the void with resignation? And it is within this tension that the technical dimensions of nihilism become most apparent. When scholars engage with topics such as the deconstruction of language, the dynamics of power and ideology, and the role of perception in constructing reality, all of which are central to the analysis of our human condition. In this light, we must consider whether the apparent absence of intrinsic meaning should lead us to dismiss all values, or whether it opens up a space for radical reinterpretation and reconstruction of purpose that is more responsive to the complexities of modern life. And when we delve into the writings of thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, who proclaimed that the death of the divine has undermined the traditional pillars of morality, we discover that his insights, far from advocating for nihilistic despair, actually invite us to challenge the status quo and to embrace the possibility of self-created values that are rooted in our own experiences and aspirations. And this paradoxical stance raises further technical questions such as how can we employ the methods of phenomenology and hermeneutics to uncover layers of meaning that are obscured by conventional narratives? And can the rigorous analysis of epistemological assumptions lead us to a more authentic mode of existence? And as we ponder these issues, we are reminded that nihilism is not simply a negation of all that is valuable, but rather a profound invitation to re-examine the very essence of our existence by stripping away illusions and exposing the raw material of life that demands to be reshaped by our deliberate choices. And in doing so, we encounter the intriguing possibility that the absence of predetermined meaning does not condemn us to a void of hopelessness, but instead provides a fertile ground for innovation and self-discovery, a notion that resonates with the broader theme of misunderstood philosophical concepts. By challenging the conventional wisdom that equates meaning with pre-established structures. And thus, we are led to ask whether the struggle to create purpose in an indifferent universe might be the highest expression of human creativity and intellectual resilience, and ultimately, by embracing the technical and theoretical challenges that nihilism presents, we may come to understand that the confrontation with nothingness is not an endpoint, but rather the beginning of a journey toward a self-defined and dynamic expression of life that demands both courage and curiosity in the face of the unknown. Objective truth. This concept challenges our assumptions about the possibility of discovering fundamental truths that hold true regardless of individual perspectives, cultures, or situations, and it compels us to ask, can there be a truth that is independent of human belief? Or are all truths simply constructs shaped by the limits and nuances of human perception? When we probe into this notion,
we encounter the complexity of understanding whether facts exist outside of human interpretation, raising further questions about the relationship between subjective belief and objective reality. It compels us to explore the foundations of knowledge from the realms of philosophy, science, and logic, asking to what extent empirical evidence can provide us with unequivocal truths, or if even the most rigorous forms of verification are dependent on assumptions that limit their universality. Beyond this, the exploration ventures into the realm of metaphysics, where we analyze whether the world exists in a certain way, regardless of whether anyone perceives it, or whether truth shifts and adapts in relation to evolving human understanding. Can we then recognize objective truths, even though our sensory faculties and cognitive processes are shaped by biases and inherent limitations? The examination of objective truth also leads us to engage with the works of philosophers like Immanuel Kant, who argued that while we cannot know things in themselves, objective truth could be understood through the framework of human categories of knowledge, capturing some measure of universal foundation within our modes of perception. But is this enough to claim the independence of objective truth? Or does it still rely on human faculties to make sense of the world? Extending the thought to contemporary issues in science, we must consider whether concepts of truth depend on empirical methods, such as experimentation and observation, or if they arise in a more abstract way, through intellectual reasoning. Moreover, as scientific knowledge expands and technological advancements continue, new frontiers of discovery force us to reconsider previous truths, leading to the question, how can objective truth remain constant in the ever-shifting landscape of human understanding that increasingly intersects with cultural, personal, and emotional variables influencing interpretation? Additionally, we face the challenge of whether communicating and applying objective truth is influenced by the boundaries between commonly accepted standards and individual ideological positions, thus complicating the issue of universal truths in a diverse world. Practically speaking, how do we determine what is truly objective if every perception can be clouded by subjective experience, and if consensus cannot always guarantee that truth itself is truly objective? These considerations urge us to rethink whether objective truth is an elusive ideal, either entirely out of reach or a continually evolving process. Ultimately, understanding the role of objective truth within the collective human quest for knowledge necessitates a careful inquiry that is as much about the process of discovery as it is about arriving at definitive answers, holding us in a constant balancing act between skepticism, empirical evidence, and the exploration of reality itself. Does objective truth, then, represent a static reality waiting to be uncovered? Or is it perhaps never fully attainable, revealing instead an ever-dynamic journey of intellectual discovery for those daring enough to pursue it?
Ontology. In the realm of philosophical inquiry, ontology invites us to examine the very essence of existence and to explore the structures that underlie all that is real, compelling us to ask whether being is an absolute state or a fluid and evolving interplay of relationships that defies simple categorization. And as we embark on this intellectual journey, we must consider the insights of thinkers who have long grappled with the nature of reality. From the ancient meditations of Aristotle and Parmenides to the modern reflections of Heidegger and Sartre, each offering distinct visions of a world in which existence is either rooted in a fixed substance or continuously shaped by dynamic processes of emergence and interpretation, prompting us to wonder if there exists a fundamental substance that forms the core of all things, or if reality is best understood as a complex network of interconnected events that derive their meaning solely through interaction. And in this investigation, we are led to reflect on technical questions regarding categories, essences, and modes of being. Questions that challenge us to determine if the classifications we impose upon the world capture its true complexity or merely serve as convenient tools for navigating our experiences.
and one may ask whether the clear boundaries we draw between what is real and what is a product of our cognitive constructs truly reflect the underlying order of the cosmos, or if they obscure a deeper, more elusive reality that escapes our grasp. And as we delve into these profound issues, we encounter debates over the nature of objects and events, the significance of language in shaping our understanding, and the possibility that our perceptions of being are but reflections of a hidden order that remains to be discovered. A notion that resonates with contemporary scientific explorations in fields such as quantum theory, where the role of the observer seems to influence the manifestation of reality, thus raising the question of whether our conceptual frameworks are adequate to capture the true nature of existence or if they are limited by the very faculties they aim to describe. And as we continue our exploration, we must also confront the challenge of reconciling the abstract and often counterintuitive ideas of ontology with the practical demands of everyday life, asking ourselves if a deeper understanding of being can transform our approach to ethics, art, and social responsibility, or if it remains an esoteric pursuit confined to the realm of academic debate. And in considering these matters, we are urged to balance rigorous rational analysis with creative reflection, to remain open to the possibility that the truth about existence may not be fixed or final, but rather a continually unfolding mystery that invites perpetual inquiry. And ultimately, the study of ontology as a misunderstood philosophical concept challenges us to embrace uncertainty, to question the assumptions that underlie our everyday perceptions, and to pursue a more profound and dynamic understanding of reality. A quest that not only enriches our intellectual lives, but also empowers us to engage with the world in a manner that is both thoughtful and transformative.
Phenomenology. Embark on a philosophical journey that delves into the essence of human experience, where the focus shifts from abstract theories to the immediate and subjective reality of consciousness. This is the captivating and often misunderstood realm of phenomenology. Rooted in the belief that philosophy should return to the things themselves, phenomenology invites us to explore the world as it appears to us, prioritizing the lived experience over theoretical constructs. At its core, phenomenology is a method of philosophical inquiry that seeks to describe and understand phenomena as they are perceived by consciousness. It is a reaction against the abstract and often detached nature of traditional philosophy, which can sometimes lose sight of the concrete experiences that shape our lives. Phenomenology aims to bridge this gap by focusing on the structures of experience and the ways in which we make sense of the world around us. The origins of phenomenology can be traced back to the early 20th century, with Edmund Husserl as its founding figure. Husserl advocated for a rigorous and systematic approach to studying consciousness, emphasizing the importance of suspending judgment about the existence of the external world in order to focus on the pure phenomena of experience. This method, known as the epoche, allows us to bracket our assumptions and biases, enabling a more direct and unmediated encounter with the objects of our perception. One of the key concepts in phenomenology is intentionality, the idea that consciousness is always directed towards something other than itself. Whether we are perceiving an object, remembering a past event, or imagining a future possibility, our consciousness is inextricably linked to the world around us. This intentional structure of experience is a fundamental aspect of phenomenology, highlighting the interconnectedness of subject and object in the process of perception. Phenomenology has had a profound impact on various fields, including psychology, sociology, and the humanities. It has influenced the development of existentialism, hermeneutics, and post-structuralism, each of which builds upon the phenomenological emphasis on subjective experience and the interpretation of meaning. Figures such as Martin Heidegger, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, and Jean-Paul Sartre have expanded upon Husserl's work, exploring the implications of phenomenology for our understanding of being, embodiment, and human existence.
However, phenomenology is not without its challenges. Critics argue that its focus on subjective experience can lead to a form of solipsism, where the existence of the external world is called into question. Others contend that the phenomenological method, with its emphasis on description rather than explanation, may not provide a comprehensive account of the complexities of human experience. So, let us embrace the challenge of phenomenology, not as a retreat into subjectivism, but as an invitation to explore the richness and depth of human experience. Let us ask ourselves, how do we make sense of the world around us? And what structures of experience shape our perception of reality? What insights can be gained from a phenomenological approach to understanding consciousness and existence? In the end, phenomenology is a call to engage with the immediacy of lived experience and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of consciousness, meaning, and the human condition.
Postmodernism. Venture into a philosophical and cultural landscape where certainties dissolve, boundaries blur, and grand narratives crumble. This is the enigmatic and often misunderstood realm of postmodernism. Emerging in the mid-20th century, postmodernism challenges the foundations of modern thought, questioning the very notion of objective truth, universal values, and fixed identities. It invites us to explore a world where meaning is fluid, reality is subjective, and the quest for absolute knowledge gives way to a celebration of diversity and ambiguity. At its heart, postmodernism is a reaction against the Enlightenment's faith in reason, progress, and universal truths. It rejects the idea that there is a single, overarching narrative that can explain the human condition or guide our understanding of the world. Instead, postmodernism embraces plurality, suggesting that there are multiple, equally valid perspectives and interpretations of reality. This shift marks a departure from the modernist belief in the power of reason to uncover objective truths and solve societal problems. One of the key figures in postmodernism is Jean-François Lyotard, who famously declared the end of grand narratives, overarching stories that claim to explain the totality of human experience, such as Marxism, Christianity, or the Enlightenment itself. Lyotard argued that these narratives have lost their credibility in the face of the complexities and contradictions of contemporary life. In their place, postmodernism celebrates little narratives, localized and personal stories that reflect the diversity of human experience. Postmodernism also challenges traditional notions of identity, suggesting that our sense of self is not fixed but fluid and constantly evolving. This perspective is influenced by thinkers like Michel Foucault, who explored how power structures shape our understanding of ourselves and the world. Foucault's work highlights the ways in which institutions, discourses, and social practices construct our identities, challenging the idea of an essential, unchanging self. In the realm of art and culture, postmodernism manifests as a playful and often irreverent blending of styles, genres, and historical periods. It embraces pastiche, irony, and the mixing of high and low culture, reflecting the fragmented and eclectic nature of contemporary life. This aesthetic is evident in the works of artists like Andy Warhol and writers like Jorge Luis Borges, who challenge traditional notions of originality, authorship, and artistic value. However, postmodernism is not without its critics. Some argue that its emphasis on relativism and the rejection of universal truths leads to a form of nihilism, where all values and beliefs are equally valid, and nothing is truly meaningful. Others contend that postmodernism's focus on the deconstruction of grand narratives undermines the possibility of collective action and social progress. So let us embrace the challenge of postmodernism, not as a rejection of meaning and value, but as an invitation to explore the complexities and contradictions of contemporary life. Let us ask ourselves, how do we navigate a world where truth is relative, identities are fluid, and grand narratives no longer hold sway?
What new forms of meaning and value can emerge from the fragments of postmodern existence? In the end, postmodernism is a call to engage with the uncertainties of our time and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of culture, philosophy, and human experience.
Pragmatism. In the realm of misunderstood philosophical concepts, pragmatism urges us to evaluate the worth of ideas by examining their practical impact rather than by measuring them against abstract ideals. And it challenges us to consider whether truth itself is a fluid concept that must prove its validity through the consequences it produces in everyday life, prompting a series of questions such as, can a belief be deemed true only if it leads to beneficial outcomes? And does the continuous interplay between thought and action suggest that our understanding is always subject to revision in light of new experiences? The influential works of William James and John Dewey serve as a foundation for this line of inquiry, as both philosophers argued that the measure of an idea lies in its ability to address real-world problems and to foster progress in society. A stance that invites you to reflect on the technical notion of verification in scientific research, where hypotheses are judged by their capacity to yield reliable and predictable results when applied, and to ask whether the pragmatic approach offers a more adaptive and resilient framework for knowledge than classical theories that insist on fixed and immutable truths. In addition, pragmatism prompts us to explore the meaning of concepts through their tangible applications, leading to further questions such as, does the value of a theory reside solely in its practical benefits, or is there a deeper dimension of understanding that remains untouched by measurable outcomes? And how does the process of learning through experimentation shape our collective wisdom? Especially when modern advancements in cognitive science and educational theory underscore the importance of experience and active inquiry in shaping our mental landscapes. As you consider these ideas, think about the role of experimentation and trial in the evolution of knowledge, and wonder if the willingness to modify beliefs in response to new evidence is the hallmark of a robust intellectual system that embraces uncertainty rather than clinging to dogmatic certainty. For pragmatism is not a call to abandon principles, but an invitation to continuously refine them based on their ability to solve problems and to promote growth in both individual lives and communities. This perspective also intersects with discussions in logic and epistemology that investigate how ideas form, change, and eventually influence behavior, urging us to question whether the success of a concept in practical application is sufficient to establish its truth, or if there remains an element of mystery that escapes empirical measurement. And as you navigate these debates, consider the possibility that a pragmatic mindset may lead to a more flexible and dynamic understanding of truth that is open to constant improvement and reinvention. Ultimately, the study of pragmatism as a philosophical concept challenges us to bridge the gap between abstract thought and concrete action, to embrace a mode of inquiry that values the evolution of ideas as much as their initial formulation, and to recognize that the journey toward understanding is as important as any final conclusion, a realization that encourages a thoughtful balance between idealistic aspirations and the tangible realities of life. Rationalism stands as one of the most influential and frequently misunderstood philosophical concepts in our exploration of ideas, urging us to consider whether the mind, through the use of innate principles and logical deduction, holds the key to unlocking universal truths that remain unclouded by the vagaries of sensory experience. And in doing so, it challenges us to ask whether the clarity of thought can surpass the sometimes deceptive impressions delivered by our senses, prompting a series of questions that have engaged great minds throughout history, such as, can the power of reason alone provide a secure foundation for knowledge? Or must we continually supplement our rational insights with empirical evidence? And as we reflect on the groundbreaking contributions of thinkers like René Descartes, who famously established the certainty of self-existence through cogitative analysis, and Baruch Spinoza,
who envisioned a harmonious system in which the laws of nature are revealed through the interplay of reason and intuitive understanding. We are led to examine the technical underpinnings of rationalism through the lens of mathematical proofs, logical syllogisms, and metaphysical postulates that offer a structured approach to discerning reality. And it is worth questioning whether these abstract frameworks truly capture the essence of the natural world, or if they serve as idealized models that require constant refinement in the light of new insights. And in this light, we must consider the role of innate ideas as posited by rationalist traditions, which assert that certain concepts are embedded in the human mind from birth, a notion that continues to fuel debates in the fields of epistemology and cognitive science, raising further inquiries such as, does the architecture of our neural networks predispose us to perceive the world in rational terms? Or is this merely a product of social conditioning and experiential learning? And as you ponder these questions, reflect on how modern scientific advancements, particularly in areas like theoretical physics and computer science, seem to echo the rationalist belief in an ordered universe where mathematical laws govern both the seen and unseen, prompting us to ask if the success of these disciplines is a testament to the inherent rational structure of reality, or simply a convenient framework that aligns with our cognitive biases. And further still, the evolution of artificial intelligence challenges us to consider whether the processes of logical reasoning can be mechanized in a manner that rivals the human capacity for abstract thought, thus blurring the lines between natural and synthetic intelligence. And ultimately, the study of rationalism as a misunderstood philosophical concept invites us to embrace the power of reason while acknowledging its limitations, urging us to adopt a balanced approach that harmonizes deductive logic with the empirical insights gained from direct observation. And in doing so, we are encouraged to recognize that the pursuit of knowledge is a dynamic and ongoing dialogue between the certainty of the mind and the complexity of experience, a dialogue that inspires us to continually question, refine, and expand our understanding of the world in a quest that not only pays homage to the great rationalists of the past, but also lays the groundwork for future explorations into the nature of truth, prompting the reflective inquiry. Can the precision of reason alone illuminate the mysteries of existence? Or must we also welcome the unpredictable and multifaceted dimensions of lived experience in our journey toward a more complete understanding of reality?
Relativism. Relativism stands as one of the most challenging and frequently misunderstood philosophical positions in the realm of thought that contests the notion of universal truth by suggesting that what we deem as truth and value are inextricably linked to the cultural, historical, and individual contexts in which they arise. And as we embark on this inquiry, we are prompted to ask whether our moral judgments, epistemic claims, and even our understanding of reality are merely products of our unique circumstances, or if there exists a standard of truth that transcends these variations. Drawing on the ideas of influential thinkers such as Friedrich Nietzsche, who argued that our concepts of truth are driven by the will to power, and Richard Rorty, who questioned the possibility of objective knowledge, we must confront the question: can any belief be considered absolutely true when every perspective is molded by its own framework? Or do we simply embrace a multiplicity of viewpoints that coexist in a dynamic equilibrium? And as we delve into the technical aspects of relativism, we encounter the intricate interplay of language, perception, and social conditioning, all of which contribute to the construction of meaning and highlight the idea that our understanding of the world is not fixed, but fluid, constantly adapting to new experiences and interpretations. This line of thought encourages us to consider whether the rejection of universal norms leads inevitably to moral and intellectual chaos, or whether it opens the door to a more inclusive and adaptive mode of inquiry that values diversity and fosters dialogue between differing cultures and viewpoints. And as you reflect on these issues, ask yourself if the relativist position implies that every viewpoint holds equal merit,
or if there exists a method to critically assess the validity of each claim based on its practical outcomes and intersubjective consensus. For modern research in fields such as anthropology and cognitive science, supports the idea that our cognitive frameworks are shaped by our social environments, suggesting that the criteria for what is considered true may be as varied as the communities that generate them. And yet, even within a relativist framework, many scholars argue that common ground can be found through shared human experiences and the consistent patterns that emerge when diverse cultures interact, prompting further inquiry into whether truth is entirely a matter of perspective, or if the interplay between subjective interpretations and objective realities yields a more refined understanding of our world. Moreover, the implications of relativism extend to ethics and political theory, where the absence of absolute moral standards challenges us to rethink how we address conflicts between differing cultural practices and moral codes, and to ask if a relativist approach fosters a deeper empathy and willingness to engage in dialogue rather than enforcing rigid rules that may not resonate across diverse contexts. And as we consider these questions, we are reminded that the study of relativism as a misunderstood philosophical concept is not an endorsement of moral anarchy, but a call to embrace complexity, to recognize that our quest for truth is an evolving process that benefits from the incorporation of multiple perspectives. And ultimately, by engaging with relativism, we are invited to reconsider the foundations of our beliefs, to challenge the assumptions that underlie our understanding of the world, and to pursue a more nuanced and dynamic vision of truth that honors both the diversity of human experience and the possibility of shared meaning.
Skepticism. In the realm of philosophical inquiry, the concept of skepticism challenges the foundations of what we claim to know by insisting on a careful examination of the assumptions underlying our beliefs, prompting us to ask, can we ever truly trust the reliability of our senses or the logical frameworks through which we interpret the world? Or are we destined to be caught in an endless cycle of doubt that undermines every assertion of certainty? And when we reflect on the ancient tradition of Pyrrhonian skepticism, which embraced the suspension of judgment as a means to achieve mental tranquility, we are led to consider whether doubt itself might serve as a tool for clarifying our thoughts rather than as an obstacle to understanding, a notion that finds echoes in the methodological skepticism of Descartes, who famously sought to discard every belief susceptible to even the slightest uncertainty in his quest for indubitable truth. Yet, as we examine the ideas of David Hume, who argued that our notions of cause and effect emerge not from logical deduction but from habitual association, we are compelled to confront the possibility that what we regard as knowledge may merely be a series of mental constructs shaped by experience and prone to error, raising the question, is the empirical evidence collected through scientific inquiry sufficient to dispel the inherent doubts about our perceptions? Or does it simply provide a provisional framework that remains vulnerable to relentless questioning? As we delve into these technical concerns, the interplay between reason and sensory perception becomes increasingly apparent. For while rigorous logical analysis offers a systematic means of organizing our experiences, the fallibility of human observation reminds us that even our most confident beliefs are susceptible to misinterpretation, urging us to ask, how can we reconcile the objective pursuit of truth with the subjective nature of our cognitive faculties? And is it possible to strike a balance between nurturing healthy skepticism and maintaining the practical convictions necessary to navigate everyday life? Moreover, the ongoing debates in epistemology concerning the criteria for genuine knowledge, whether it be justified true belief or another standard yet to be universally accepted, add further complexity to our quest for certainty, inviting us to explore whether skepticism should be viewed as a radical deconstruction of established norms or as a constructive force that refines our intellectual frameworks by subjecting them to continuous critical examination. In light of these reflections, we must also consider the broader implications of skepticism for ethics, science, and art, questioning whether the persistent habit of inquiry fosters a deeper engagement with the world
or leaves us ensnared in a state of perpetual indecision and isolation. And ultimately, as we confront the challenges posed by skepticism, we are invited to embrace the discomfort of uncertainty as an intrinsic aspect of the human experience, to cultivate an attitude of inquiry that refuses to settle for facile answers, and to recognize that in the delicate dance between doubt and conviction, there lies the potential to forge a more resilient and profound pathway to wisdom that honors both the complexity of our perceptions and the enduring mystery inherent in the pursuit of truth.
Solipsism. This concept is a philosophical proposition that claims the only certainty is the existence of one's own mind, and that every experience of an external reality may be nothing more than a creation of personal consciousness, a view that challenges the foundations of objective truth and compels us to ask, how can we be absolutely certain that the world we perceive exists independently of our thoughts? And is it possible that all that we consider real is merely a projection of our inner processes? As we delve into the technical aspects of epistemology and metaphysics, we must examine the cognitive mechanisms and neural activities that construct our perceptions. For modern research in neuroscience and psychology reveals that the human brain organizes sensory input using intricate interpretative frameworks that are deeply influenced by individual experience, which in turn raises the question of whether our empirical evidence is a reliable indicator of an external world or simply an elaborate simulation generated by our mind. Furthermore, the study of solipsism encourages us to engage with the works of influential philosophers such as Descartes, whose method of radical doubt led him to conclude that the act of doubting confirms the existence of the doubter, and to consider whether this line of reasoning ultimately undermines the possibility of establishing any shared reality, or whether it instead serves as a valuable tool for scrutinizing our assumptions about knowledge and the nature of truth. And as we reflect on these matters, we are prompted to ask if the philosophical challenges posed by solipsism imply that the pursuit of objective understanding is an unattainable ideal or a necessary endeavor to overcome the limitations of a purely subjective view of existence. Additionally, the implications of solipsism extend to ethical and existential dimensions, inviting us to ponder whether a belief in the primacy of the self inevitably leads to isolation and moral disorientation, or whether it can spark a deeper engagement with the mysteries of being, a process that might encourage creative expression and self-exploration in the face of uncertainty. And we are led to question if embracing the notion that all external phenomena are dependent on personal experience might in fact open new avenues for artistic and scientific inquiry that challenge conventional boundaries between subject and object. And in the realm of philosophy, this debate between subjectivism and realism prompts us to examine whether the commitment to an independent external reality is merely a comforting illusion or a robust framework that enables meaningful interaction with the world. And as we navigate these challenging ideas, we must ask, can rigorous logical analysis and empirical investigation ultimately resolve the tension between the inner realm of consciousness and the external domain of perceived objects? Or does the mystery of solipsism persist as a permanent reminder of the limits of human understanding? And ultimately, by engaging with the perplexing arguments and technical considerations that underlie solipsism, we not only broaden our conceptual horizons but also enhance our appreciation for the profound complexity of existence, thereby reaffirming the importance of philosophical inquiry as a means of grappling with the most fundamental questions about the nature of reality and our place within it. Stoicism. This concept, rooted in the ancient philosophical tradition of Zeno and his followers, proposes a profound approach to human flourishing by emphasizing the development of virtue and rationality amidst life's inevitable challenges, urging individuals to cultivate inner serenity by aligning their desires with nature's order and understanding that the external world is often beyond our control. Through this lens, we are prompted to ask, can we truly attain happiness when we embrace only what is within our power to change and accept the rest with equanimity? And is this emotional resilience an attainable ideal or a daunting challenge?
As we explore Stoic principles, we must consider their practical implications through the interplay of ethics, psychology, and metaphysics, particularly in how self-control, wisdom, and justice help us navigate adversity without succumbing to frustration, and whether the Stoic commitment to maintaining virtue despite external circumstances offers a more profound sense of purpose than material success. Additionally, we might contemplate whether Stoicism's core idea, the dichotomy between what we can control and what we cannot, helps to ease the suffering that arises from life's unforeseen difficulties, or if it risks detaching us from personal responsibility by merely focusing on acceptance. And as we examine Stoicism's ancient roots in the writings of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, we see a universal appeal. Living virtuously, according to reason, remains timeless and transcends the social norms of any given period, making us ask whether this ancient philosophy can be adapted to balance modernity's demands for external achievement and material wealth with a sustainable, inward-focused sense of peace. Furthermore, the Stoic approach invites a technical exploration of our psychological institutions, especially the development of cognitive behavioral techniques that mirror Stoic teachings about transforming one's perceptions of obstacles into opportunities for growth, which challenges us to rethink our emotional responses. Moreover, modern reflections on Stoicism ask, what implications do Stoic ideas have for justice in society, where an individual must act as a rational agent for the collective good, especially in an era of egocentric pursuits and the prioritization of individual wealth? Ultimately, Stoicism offers a remarkable refinement of how we might live a meaningful life, one rooted not in passive resignation, but an active pursuit of wisdom and virtue through disciplined practice and awareness, teaching a valuable lesson of accepting life as it unfolds while dedicating oneself not to external outcomes, but to internal transformation, asking each of us, can true peace only be achieved when we let go of attachment to the uncontrollable and focus instead on developing our own rational character? Tabula rasa. In contemplating the notion that the human mind begins as an empty canvas, we are invited to explore the idea that every thought, memory, and learned behavior is not predetermined by innate ideas, but is instead written upon by experience in the world around us. A perspective that challenges us to consider whether our beliefs are entirely the products of environmental influences, or if there exists a subtle inherent predisposition that guides the formation of knowledge. The influential philosopher John Locke famously argued that the mind is like an unblemished board that receives its markings solely through sensory experiences and reflection, a claim that has sparked extensive debate among scholars and continues to shape discussions in the fields of education, developmental psychology, and cognitive science, prompting the question, if our mind starts as a blank slate, does every skill and every concept emerge purely from the external world? Or might there be an inborn capacity that predisposes us to certain ways of thinking, even before we encounter specific stimuli? Recent advances in neuroscience have revealed the remarkable phenomenon of neuroplasticity, wherein the brain is capable of reorganizing its structure in response to experience. A technical insight that seems to support the blank slate theory by demonstrating how environmental input can have a profound impact on neural pathways. Yet these discoveries also invite us to ask whether the degree of neural adaptability is itself determined by genetic factors that may set the stage for how effectively the mind can be inscribed. And as you consider the intricate dance between nature and nurture, it is worthwhile to reflect on the technical concepts of critical periods in learning and the mechanisms by which our sensory systems filter and integrate information, which collectively suggest that while the mind may begin devoid of content, the process by which it fills with knowledge is far from passive or uniform. This raises further questions about the reliability of memory and perception. For if every impression is etched anew, How do we account for the consistency of long-held truths and cultural narratives that seem to persist across generations? And does this imply that the blank slate model must be reconciled with the idea of a shared human capacity for abstract thought and language? Moreover, the debate surrounding tabula rasa has significant implications for moral responsibility, as it challenges us to ponder whether individuals can be held entirely accountable for actions that are the result of environmental conditioning, or if such a view necessitates a more nuanced understanding of free will and ethical development. And in this context, the discussions of empiricism must be set against rationalist critiques that claim certain concepts, such as the idea of beauty or justice, cannot be entirely learned from experience, but are part of an innate cognitive framework. As we traverse these complex intersections of philosophy and science, we are reminded that the blank slate remains one of the most misunderstood and yet deeply fascinating philosophical concepts, urging us to question not only the origins of our knowledge, but also the nature of learning itself, and ultimately, by engaging with the debates that have occupied thinkers from Locke to modern cognitive theorists, we are called to consider whether the mind is a passive receiver of the world or an active creator of meaning, a realization that may transform our approach to education, personal growth, and our understanding of what it truly means to be human.
The absence of meaning. Picture a library where every book is blank, its pages pristine and unmarked, a universe indifferent to the stories we etch upon it. This existential void, often mislabeled as nihilism, is not the denial of meaning but the stark revelation that meaning is not handed down by gods, nature, or destiny. It is a fragile edifice we build and rebuild in the face of silence. Philosophers like Nietzsche declared God is dead, not to condemn humanity to despair, but to liberate it, to force us to confront our role as architects of significance in a cosmos that offers none. Yet this freedom terrifies. Sartre's "existence precedes essence" places the burden of purpose squarely on our shoulders. A responsibility so vast it paralyzes, breeding what Kierkegaard called the dizziness of freedom. Modern psychology mirrors this tension. Viktor Frankl, surviving Auschwitz, argued that even in suffering, humans crave meaning. Yet studies reveal that the more we demand universal purpose, the more hollow we feel, a paradox dubbed existential anxiety. The terror management theory exposes our frantic dance against mortality, how we cling to cultural myths, careers, or legacies to distract from life's fleeting absurdity. But here lies the rub. Absence is not emptiness. Camus' myth of Sisyphus reimagines the absurd hero, rolling his boulder eternally, not in resignation, but in defiance. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding fulfillment in the struggle itself. Neuroscience complicates this further. Dopamine pathways fire not when we find meaning, but when we seek it, a cruel evolutionary joke that addicts us to the chase. The digital age amplifies the void, flooding us with distractions, endless scrolls, viral trends that substitute transient stimulation for depth, leaving souls parched. Yet the absence of inherent meaning is not a curse, but a canvas. Buddhist anicca, impermanence, teaches that clinging to fixed truths breeds suffering, while postmodernism fractures grand narratives into personal mosaics. Even despair, as Heidegger noted, can be a portal, the readiness to be anxious, to awaken from the trance of borrowed beliefs. The resolution: to trade the hunger for cosmic purpose with the courage to plant gardens in the desert, to craft meaning in acts of love, creation, or rebellion. As Rilke wrote, "Live the questions now, for the answer lies not in the stars, but in the weight of a hand held in darkness, the brushstroke on a blank page, the choice to laugh into the void, not because it answers, but because it cannot." The allegory of the cave. Imagine a subterranean world where prisoners are chained, facing a blank wall, mistaking shadows cast by a fire for reality itself. This is the evocative and often misunderstood allegory of the cave, presented by Plato in his seminal work, The Republic, to illustrate the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. In this philosophical parable, the prisoners represent humanity, content with the illusion of reality presented by the shadows, unaware of the true forms that cast them. The shadows are mere representations of objects being carried behind them, illuminated by a fire, and the prisoners, having never seen anything else, accept these shadows as the totality of existence. One prisoner, however, is freed from these bonds and compelled to turn around, witnessing the fire and the objects creating the shadows. This revelation is initially painful and disorienting, as the freed prisoner's eyes adjust to the new light. The journey does not end there. The freed individual ascends further out of the cave, experiencing the brilliance of the sun, which symbolizes the form of the good, the ultimate truth and source of all knowledge. This allegory is not merely a critique of sensory perception, but an invitation to question the depth of our understanding and to seek the profound truths that lie beyond surface appearances. It challenges us to consider whether our perceptions are mere shadows of a deeper reality, urging us to pursue knowledge, wisdom, and the liberation of the mind from the chains of ignorance. The journey out of the cave represents the arduous path of philosophical inquiry where the pursuit of truth can be disorienting and uncomfortable, yet ultimately transformative, revealing the essence of existence that eludes those content with shadows. Plato's allegory also serves as a commentary on education and the role of the philosopher in society. The freed prisoner, having glimpsed the true nature of reality, has a moral obligation to return to the cave and enlighten the other prisoners, despite their initial resistance and disbelief. This return is fraught with challenges, as those still in the cave may reject the enlightened individual's teachings, preferring the familiarity of their shadowy existence. The allegory thus underscores the importance of education in cultivating virtue and wisdom, and the responsibility of those who have gained insight to share their knowledge for the betterment of society.
The Gettier problem. Imagine a scenario where a person holds a belief that is both true and justified, yet intuitively, we hesitate to call it knowledge. This is the intriguing and often misunderstood conundrum known as the Gettier problem. Introduced by Edmund Gettier in his 1963 paper, Is Justified True Belief Knowledge? This problem challenges the traditional definition of knowledge as justified true belief, a notion that has been a cornerstone of epistemology since ancient times. The Gettier problem invites us to explore the complexities of knowledge, belief, and justification, and to question whether our intuitions about what constitutes knowledge are as straightforward as they seem. Gettier presented two counterexamples to the traditional definition of knowledge, each illustrating a situation where a belief is true and justified, yet falls short of being considered knowledge. In one scenario, Smith has strong evidence that Jones will get a particular job, and Smith infers from this that the person who gets the job will have 10 coins in their pocket, as Jones does. Unbeknownst to Smith, he himself will get the job and also has 10 coins in his pocket. While Smith's belief is true and justified, it seems more like a lucky guess than genuine knowledge. This example highlights the gap between justified true belief and knowledge, suggesting that something more is required for a belief to count as knowledge. The Gettier problem has sparked extensive debate among philosophers, leading to various attempts to refine the definition of knowledge. Some have proposed adding a fourth condition to the traditional tripartite definition, such as the requirement that the belief be caused in the right way, or that it not be subject to certain kinds of luck. Others have suggested that knowledge requires a more robust connection between the belief and the truth, such as reliability or safety from error. These responses reflect the ongoing effort to capture our intuitions about knowledge and to address the challenges posed by Gettier-style cases. The Gettier problem also intersects with broader philosophical questions about the nature of justification, the role of luck in epistemology, and the standards for knowledge attribution. It invites us to consider how we distinguish between genuine knowledge and mere lucky guesses, and how we evaluate the reliability of our beliefs. Moreover, it challenges us to reflect on the conditions under which we are willing to attribute knowledge to ourselves and others, and to consider the implications of these attributions for our understanding of the world. So, let us embrace the challenge of the Gettier problem, not as a mere intellectual puzzle, but as an invitation to explore the depths of human cognition and to question the foundations of our epistemic beliefs. Let us ask ourselves, what distinguishes knowledge from mere belief, and how do we account for the role of luck and justification in our epistemic practices? In the end, the Gettier problem is a call to engage with the complexities of knowledge and belief, and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of reason, intuition, and the human quest for understanding.
The mind-body problem. Delve into the enigmatic intersection where consciousness meets corporeality, where the ethereal realm of thought encounters the tangible substance of the body. This is the perplexing and often misunderstood domain of the mind-body problem, a philosophical conundrum that has puzzled thinkers for centuries. At its core, the mind-body problem grapples with the fundamental question of how the immaterial mind and the physical brain interact, and whether they are distinct entities or two aspects of a single phenomenon. The mind-body problem is not merely an academic curiosity, but a profound inquiry into the nature of existence, consciousness, and identity. It invites us to question the very essence of what it means to be human and to ponder the mysteries of subjective experience in a material world. Philosophers throughout history have proposed various solutions to this problem, each offering a unique perspective on the relationship between mind and body. René Descartes, the 17th century philosopher, famously proposed a dualistic solution to the mind-body problem. Descartes argued that the mind and the body are two distinct substances. The mind, an immaterial entity capable of thought and consciousness, and the body, a material entity governed by the laws of physics. This dualism posits that the mind and body interact, but their exact mechanism of interaction remains a subject of debate. Descartes' view, while influential, has been criticized for creating a seemingly unbridgeable gap between the mental and the physical. In contrast to dualism, materialist philosophers argue that the mind is not a separate substance but an emergent property of the brain. This perspective suggests that consciousness and mental states are the result of complex neurobiological processes. However, materialism struggles to explain the subjective nature of conscious experience, leading to the so-called hard problem of consciousness. How can physical processes give rise to subjective experiences? Another approach to the mind-body problem is idealism, which posits that only minds and ideas are truly fundamental, and that the material world is either an illusion or a construct of the mind. This view, while intriguing, faces the challenge of explaining the apparent reality and consistency of the physical world. The mind-body problem also intersects with modern scientific inquiries, particularly in the fields of neuroscience and cognitive science. Advances in brain imaging and neurobiology have shed light on the correlations between mental states and brain activity, yet the exact nature of this relationship remains elusive. These scientific explorations invite us to consider how our understanding of the brain can inform our philosophical views on the mind. So, let us embrace the challenge of the mind-body problem, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as an invitation to explore the profound mysteries of consciousness and existence. Let us ask ourselves, what is the nature of the mind, and how does it relate to the physical brain? How can we reconcile the subjective experience of consciousness with the objective study of the material world?
In the end, the mind-body problem is a call to delve into the depths of human experience and to ponder the enigmatic intersection where thought meets substance, the problem of evil. Imagine a world where the existence of a benevolent, omnipotent, and omniscient deity is called into question by the presence of suffering and evil. This is the profound and often misunderstood conundrum known as the problem of evil. This philosophical challenge grapples with the apparent contradiction between the nature of God, as conceived in many theistic traditions, and the reality of evil and suffering in the world. The problem of evil is not merely an intellectual puzzle, but a deeply existential question that invites us to explore the nature of divine goodness, human freedom, and the meaning of suffering. The problem of evil is often attributed to the Greek philosopher Epicurus and has been a subject of debate among theologians and philosophers for centuries. The dilemma can be succinctly stated as follows. If God is all good, all-knowing, and all-powerful, then why does evil exist? The presence of evil seems to challenge one or more of these divine attributes. If God is all good, He would desire to prevent evil. If all-knowing, He would be aware of evil. And if all-powerful, He would be capable of preventing it. The coexistence of these attributes with the reality of evil presents a paradox that has sparked numerous theological and philosophical responses. One prominent response to the problem of evil is the free will defense, which argues that evil exists because God has granted humans free will, and true freedom includes the capacity to choose evil. Proponents of this defense, such as St. Augustine and Alvin Plantinga, contend that a world with free will is inherently more valuable than one without it, even if it allows for the possibility of evil. This perspective shifts the focus from divine responsibility to human agency, suggesting that evil is a consequence of our choices rather than a reflection of divine incapacity or malevolence. Another response is the soul-making defense, which posits that suffering and evil are necessary for spiritual growth and the development of virtues such as compassion, courage, and resilience. This view, advocated by philosophers like John Hick, suggests that a world without suffering would lack the conditions necessary for moral and spiritual development. According to this defense, evil serves a greater purpose in the divine plan, even if its immediate effects are painful and tragic. The problem of evil also intersects with broader philosophical and existential questions about the nature of suffering, the meaning of life, and the role of religion in human existence. It invites us to consider how we make sense of tragedy and injustice, and how we find hope and purpose in a world marked by pain and loss. Moreover, it challenges us to reflect on our own responses to evil and suffering, and to consider how we can alleviate the pain of others and contribute to a more just and compassionate world. So let us embrace the challenge of the problem of evil, not as a reason for despair or disbelief, but as an invitation to explore the depths of human existence and to question the nature of divine goodness and the meaning of suffering. Let us ask ourselves, how do we reconcile the reality of evil with our beliefs about the divine? How can we find hope and purpose in the face of suffering? In the end, the problem of evil is a call to engage with the complexities of human experience and to ponder the profound questions that arise at the intersection of faith, reason, and the human condition. The trolley problem. Imagine a scenario where you are standing by a lever that controls the path of a runaway trolley. Ahead, 5 people are tied to the tracks, unaware of the impending danger. You can pull the lever to divert the trolley onto a side track, saving the 5. But there is a catch. One person is tied to the side track and will be sacrificed. This is the provocative and often misunderstood trolley problem, a thought experiment in ethics that challenges our moral intuitions and forces us to grapple with the consequences of our actions.
The trolley problem is not merely an academic exercise, but a profound exploration of the moral dilemmas that arise when we must choose between the lesser of two evils. It invites us to question the foundations of our ethical beliefs and to consider the complexities of moral decision-making in a world where choices often have unavoidable consequences. The trolley problem was first introduced by Philippa Foot and later expanded upon by Judith Jarvis Thomson, who added variations to the scenario to explore different ethical principles. One such variation involves pushing a large person off a bridge to stop the trolley, rather than simply pulling a lever. This modification highlights the distinction between killing and letting die, and the moral significance of our actions versus our intentions. The problem also intersects with various ethical theories, such as utilitarianism, which advocates for the greatest good for the greatest number, and deontology, which emphasizes the inherent rightness or wrongness of actions, regardless of their consequences. Utilitarians might argue that sacrificing one to save five is morally justifiable, while deontologists might contend that intentionally causing harm is inherently wrong, regardless of the outcome. The trolley problem has real-world implications, particularly in fields such as medicine, law, and technology. For instance, in healthcare, decisions about resource allocation and end-of-life care often involve similar moral dilemmas. In the realm of autonomous vehicles, programmers must grapple with how to code self-driving cars to respond in situations where harm is unavoidable, echoing the ethical quandaries presented by the trolley problem. These scenarios challenge us to consider how our moral principles should guide our actions in a complex and uncertain world. So let us embrace the challenge of the trolley problem, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as an invitation to explore the depths of our moral intuitions and to question the foundations of our ethical beliefs. Let us ask ourselves, what principles guide our moral decisions? And how do we balance the consequences of our actions with our ethical commitments? In the end, the trolley problem is a call to engage with the complexities of moral decision-making and to ponder the ethical dilemmas that arise when we must choose between difficult and imperfect options. The absurd. In the intricate network of thought where human longing for order meets the chaotic unpredictability of the cosmos, we are confronted with a challenge that invites us to question the very foundation of our search for meaning and purpose. And one cannot help but ask what it means to live in a world where the pursuit of clarity is met with an endless dance of randomness and uncertainty. And is it possible that this encounter with apparent meaninglessness may serve not as a defeat, but as a catalyst for a liberating acceptance of our own creative power? And as we explore this idea, we find ourselves drawn into a dialogue between reason and emotion. A conversation that seeks to reconcile the human desire for definitive explanations with the stark reality that existence may offer no inherent order. And in this quest, we are compelled to scrutinize the technical frameworks of epistemology and existential inquiry, examining whether the methods of scientific investigation and logical reasoning are truly capable of capturing the multifaceted nature of a reality that often defies predictable patterns, or if these tools merely provide us with a temporary scaffold to navigate a universe that is, at its core, unfathomable. And the exploration of the absurd naturally brings to mind the writings of thinkers like Albert Camus, whose insights suggest that the confrontation with a world devoid of clear purpose is not an invitation to despair, but rather a call to embrace personal freedom and creative expression, prompting us to ask if artistic endeavors and literary creations are merely escapist diversions, or if they represent a profound method of engaging with the mystery that surrounds us. And further inquiry leads us to consider whether our innate tendency to seek patterns in random events is an evolutionary trait that has served to foster survival and innovation, or if it is the very source of our perpetual discontent as we strive to impose order on a cosmos that remains indifferent to our aspirations. And as we delve into these themes, we encounter intersections with psychology and neuroscience,
where research reveals that our minds are predisposed to detect order even in chaos, a phenomenon that may underlie the existential tension between the need for structure and the acceptance of life's inherent unpredictability. And this observation raises additional questions regarding whether the subjective experience of the absurd is a mere byproduct of cognitive processes or a deeper reflection of an ultimate reality that lies beyond the reach of conventional reason. And as we continue to probe this intricate subject, we must also examine the ethical and personal implications of accepting a world without predetermined meaning. For if life is indeed stripped of inherent purpose, does this liberation empower individuals to forge their own values with authenticity and courage? Or does it risk ushering in a state of moral disarray? And ultimately, the concept of the absurd challenges us to transform our encounter with uncertainty into a journey of introspection and self-discovery, urging us to reframe our understanding of order and chaos in a manner that celebrates the dynamic and ever-evolving character of existence, a pursuit that may well represent the highest form of artistic and philosophical expression in our continuous quest to illuminate the depths of our inner worlds amidst the vast, impenetrable darkness of uncertainty.
The categorical imperative. The categorical imperative stands as one of the most seminal and yet often misunderstood moral formulations in the history of ethical philosophy, inviting us to explore whether the true measure of moral action lies in the intention behind it rather than its outcomes, and challenging us to determine if there exists a universal standard of duty that every rational being can accept without exception. Does the command to act only on principles that one could will to be universal laws provide a solid foundation for ethical behavior? Or does it impose an abstract rigidity that fails to account for the nuances of human experience? And as we delve into the technical intricacies of Kantian thought, we encounter a framework where reason is elevated above personal inclinations, and the morality of an action is judged solely by its underlying maxim, prompting us to ask whether such an approach can resolve the dilemmas posed by conflicting duties in complex social situations. And in contemplating the contributions of Immanuel Kant, whose rigorous analysis of morality insists that duty derived from pure rationality is the only basis for genuine ethical conduct, we are led to question if the categorical imperative can truly bridge the gap between idealized principles and the practical demands of modern life, including issues such as human rights, environmental concerns, and the ethical use of emerging technologies, or if its abstract nature leaves it open to interpretation and misapplication, and further reflection compels us to consider whether the insistence on acting only in ways that can be universalized may in fact limit individual freedom by forcing a conformity that stifles personal judgment, or whether it instead fosters a communal sense of justice by ensuring that our actions are always measured against the highest standard of consistency and fairness. And as we examine the technical debates in meta-ethics, we are confronted with the challenge of distinguishing between actions that are inherently moral and those that merely appear virtuous due to societal conditioning, prompting the inquiry: is there an objective moral law that transcends cultural and historical contingencies? Or is the notion of universalizability itself a construct of human reasoning that may falter when confronted with the unpredictable realities of life? And in this light, we must explore how the categorical imperative compares with other ethical theories, such as consequentialism, which emphasizes the outcomes of actions, and virtue ethics, which focuses on the development of character, questioning if a strict adherence to duty can coexist with the demands of empathy and context sensitivity. And as you reflect on these issues, consider whether the categorical imperative is an enduring beacon that guides us toward a more principled and just society, or if it remains an ideal that, while intellectually appealing, struggles to address the moral ambiguities that arise in everyday interactions. And ultimately, by engaging with the categorical imperative as a misunderstood philosophical concept, we are invited to continuously re-examine our own moral intuitions, to refine our ethical frameworks in the light of new challenges,
and to seek a harmonious balance between the unyielding demands of universal reason and the rich, diverse tapestry of human life.
The eternal return. Imagine a cosmic symphony where every note, every melody, every harmony is destined to repeat itself in an infinite loop, a grand recurrence of all events, both monumental and mundane. This is the profound and often misunderstood concept of the eternal return, a philosophical idea that invites us to confront the cyclical nature of existence. Proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, the eternal return posits that the universe and all its events have occurred and will occur an infinite number of times, exactly as they have before. This thought experiment is not merely a cosmological hypothesis, but a challenge to our understanding of meaning, purpose, and the value of our actions. Often misconstrued as a nihilistic doctrine that renders life meaningless, the eternal return is, in fact, a call to affirm life in all its complexity, and to embrace the present moment with unyielding intensity. Nietzsche argued that the idea of eternal recurrence should serve as a litmus test for our choices and values. If we were to live our lives over and over again, would we affirm our actions and decisions, or would we be crushed by the weight of their repetition? This concept compels us to question whether we are living authentically, whether our actions align with our deepest values, and whether we are willing to bear the responsibility for our choices, not just once, but for eternity. In a world where the pursuit of novelty and distraction often eclipses the search for meaning, the eternal return serves as a stark reminder of the importance of the present moment and the enduring significance of our actions. It urges us to create a life that we would willingly relive, to embrace our experiences fully, and to strive for greatness, knowing that each moment is a thread in the eternal tapestry of existence. So, let us embrace the challenge of the eternal return, not as a resignation to fate, but as an invitation to live with passion, purpose, and an unwavering commitment to the values that define us. The greater good. The greater good stands as one of the most challenging and frequently misunderstood ethical principles in our exploration of philosophical ideas, compelling us to examine whether the pursuit of overall societal benefit can justify actions that may compromise individual interests, and it invites us to ask, can the aggregation of happiness truly serve as the ultimate measure of moral action? Or does such a utilitarian calculus risk overlooking the inherent dignity and rights of every person? And as we delve into the technical aspects of this concept, we find ourselves drawing on the insights of influential thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, whose utilitarian frameworks posit that actions should be evaluated based on their capacity to maximize pleasure and minimize pain for the greatest number. Yet this approach raises pressing questions about distributive justice and whether a focus on numerical advantage can adequately address the qualitative differences that define human experience, prompting us to wonder if a policy that benefits the majority might inadvertently marginalize minority groups or lead to the sacrifice of essential freedoms. And further, modern debates in political philosophy and public policy have introduced tools such as cost-benefit analysis and risk assessment to quantify the impact of decisions, which forces us to confront the technical challenge of measuring well-being in a manner that captures both tangible outcomes and intangible values like respect, love, and personal fulfillment. And as you consider these issues, ask yourself whether the ideal of the greater good remains a noble aspiration or if it functions as a double-edged sword that can be manipulated to serve agendas that justify inequity under the guise of collective benefit. And in this context, the contributions of Immanuel Kant remind us that moral worth cannot be reduced to mere consequences. For his emphasis on the intrinsic value of the individual urges us to balance the relentless pursuit of aggregate benefit with a steadfast commitment to human rights and autonomy, a tension that becomes even more pronounced in contemporary discussions about healthcare, environmental policy, and social welfare.
where the desire to achieve overall improvement may lead to difficult trade-offs that challenge our ethical intuitions, and as we explore interdisciplinary dialogues that bring together perspectives from economics, sociology, and cognitive science, we must ask, can our best empirical models capture the full complexity of human needs and cultural nuances, or are they limited by the very metrics we use to define success? And what role does moral imagination play in reconciling the sometimes conflicting demands of efficiency and fairness? And in reflecting on these profound questions, we recognize that the greater good is not a static or unassailable principle, but a dynamic ideal that requires continuous reevaluation and open debate, urging us to strive for a balanced approach that honors both the collective well-being of society and the sanctity of individual life. And ultimately, the pursuit of the greater good challenges us to envision a world in which progress is measured not only by the sum of its parts, but by the quality of relationships and the extent to which every person is treated with dignity, leaving us to ponder whether true social advancement lies in the harmonious integration of communal welfare and individual rights, a reconciliation that remains one of the most enduring and misunderstood quests in the landscape of ethical thought.
The meaning of life. The meaning of life stands as one of the most perplexing and misunderstood philosophical inquiries that has captivated the human imagination for centuries, inviting us to ask whether our existence is a mere accidental occurrence in a vast, indifferent cosmos, or if it embodies a purpose that transcends mere survival and reproduction. And as we delve into this profound subject, we are compelled to examine the insights of ancient thinkers such as Aristotle, who spoke of telos as an inherent goal in every being, alongside the modern reflections of Camus, who suggested that the very struggle to find meaning might itself be the essence of life, prompting us to question, does our purpose emerge from external validation in cultural achievements and material success? Or is it rooted in the inner journey of self-discovery and the cultivation of wisdom? And in this pursuit, we must also consider the technical contributions of evolutionary biology and neuroscience, which have unraveled the intricate mechanisms of human behavior and the development of consciousness, yet often leave unanswered the deeper existential query of purpose and value, leading us to wonder if the study of our nature through empirical data can ever capture the richness of our inner lives and the quest for significance. And furthermore, we are drawn to confront the challenges posed by existential nihilism, which argues that life may inherently lack meaning, thereby urging us to reflect on whether this apparent void is an invitation to create our own values and narratives, or a descent into despair. And as you reflect on these contrasting perspectives, ask yourself, is there an immutable truth waiting to be discovered through rational inquiry and logical deduction? Or does the meaning of life emerge as a fluid and dynamic process that evolves with our interactions in the world and with one another? And in exploring these technical and philosophical dimensions, we must integrate considerations from ethics, aesthetics, and spirituality, each of which offers a unique lens on what gives life its significance, and in doing so, we encounter the possibility that meaning is constructed through our relationships, our creative endeavors, and our contributions to the collective well-being of our communities, a view that transforms the search for purpose into a multifaceted quest that defies simple categorization, urging us to adopt an integrative approach that honors both the scientific pursuit of understanding and the philosophical journey toward purpose, and ultimately, the study of the meaning of life as a misunderstood philosophical concept challenges us to persist in our search for truth, to continuously reassess our beliefs in the light of new insights, and to embrace the notion that the journey toward understanding is in itself a vital expression of our humanity, transforming each moment of existence into an opportunity for growth, reflection, and the ever-enduring hope that within the interplay of chaos and order, we may discover a reason to celebrate the mystery of our existence. The paradox of hedonism. The paradox of hedonism stands as a perplexing and often misunderstood idea
in the realm of ethical philosophy and psychology that challenges us to consider whether the deliberate pursuit of pleasure as an end in itself can ironically undermine the attainment of genuine happiness. And it invites us to ask, does an obsessive focus on seeking pleasure lead to a cycle in which the very act of pursuing delight diminishes its natural occurrence? Or does it reveal the complex interplay between desire, satisfaction, and the human condition in a way that compels us to rethink our assumptions about what it means to be happy? Reflecting on the ancient teachings of Aristippus, who celebrated a life of sensual enjoyment, alongside modern critiques that warn against the self-defeating nature of relentless pleasure-seeking, we are urged to examine the technical foundations of this paradox through the lens of contemporary psychological research. For instance, the concept of the hedonic treadmill in behavioral science shows that individuals quickly adapt to positive changes so that the initial boost of pleasure soon fades, leaving them in a perpetual quest for even greater stimulation. And this phenomenon raises the question of whether the conscious drive to maximize pleasure might trigger escalating desires that result in diminishing returns on happiness over time. Moreover, neuroscientific studies reveal that the brain's reward system, which is responsible for processing pleasure, becomes less sensitive with constant exposure to high levels of stimulation, suggesting that an overemphasis on chasing momentary delights may disturb the natural equilibrium of our emotional state. And as you reflect on this idea, consider if the strategy of seeking pleasure with extreme intensity may in fact lead to a state of chronic dissatisfaction rather than lasting contentment. This paradox extends beyond the individual and touches upon cultural and societal dimensions. For when societies elevate the pursuit of pleasure to an ultimate goal, they risk fostering environments where superficial gratification takes precedence over meaningful engagement, thereby prompting us to ask whether a culture obsessed with instant rewards might inadvertently erode deeper values such as connection, creativity, and self-reflection. In light of these concerns, modern applications in fields ranging from behavioral economics to social psychology have demonstrated how marketing and consumer culture often exploit this cycle by promising ever greater pleasures, leaving individuals trapped in an endless search for satisfaction that remains elusive. And one must wonder if the solution lies in a moderated approach that balances immediate sensory enjoyment with the cultivation of enduring values and long-term fulfillment. Furthermore, the paradox of hedonism encourages us to reflect on whether true happiness is a byproduct of living in alignment with broader, more meaningful goals, rather than the direct objective of pleasure itself. And it invites us to integrate philosophical wisdom with empirical insights to craft a lifestyle that avoids the pitfalls of excess and embraces a more sustainable and enriching vision of well-being. Ultimately, by engaging with the paradox of hedonism, we are compelled to re-examine the nature of pleasure and ask if it is a self-sustaining pursuit or simply a transient state, best appreciated as a consequence of a life lived with purpose and balance. A question that not only challenges our conventional views on happiness, but also serves as a critical reminder that the strategies we choose in our quest for joy must be carefully calibrated to ensure that we do not sacrifice the deeper, lasting satisfaction that comes from living in harmony with our most cherished values. The will to power. Enter a realm where the driving force of life is not mere survival or adaptation, but an insatiable urge to assert oneself, to overcome resistance, and to shape the world according to one's own values. This is the enigmatic and often misunderstood concept of the will to power, a philosophical idea introduced by Friedrich Nietzsche. At its core, the will to power is not a lust for domination, but a creative impulse, a life-affirming energy that seeks expression and growth. Yet it is frequently misconstrued as a justification for brutality or a celebration of ruthless ambition.
To understand the will to power, we must delve into the labyrinth of Nietzsche's thought and grapple with the profound questions it raises about human nature, morality, and the meaning of existence. Nietzsche, a philosopher known for his radical critique of traditional values, saw the will to power as the fundamental drive that underlies all life. He argued that every organism, from the simplest to the most complex, is driven by an innate desire to exert its influence, to expand its sphere of control, and to affirm its existence in the face of an indifferent universe. This is not a call to tyranny, but a recognition of the creative potential that lies within each of us. Consider the concept of Übermensch, or Overman, a figure who embodies the will to power by transcending conventional morality and creating new values. The Übermensch is not a superhero, but a symbol of human potential, a being who embraces the challenge of existence and strives for greatness. Nietzsche's philosophy invites us to ask, what values do we hold dear, and are they truly our own, or are they inherited from tradition and convention? How can we affirm our existence in a world that often seems devoid of meaning? The will to power also intersects with the ideas of other philosophers, such as Arthur Schopenhauer, who saw the world as driven by a blind, insatiable will. Unlike Schopenhauer's pessimistic view, Nietzsche's will to power is a life-affirming force, a celebration of the creative potential that lies within each of us. It challenges us to confront the nihilism that arises from the death of God, the loss of absolute values and meaning, and to create our own purpose in a godless world. In the realm of psychology, the will to power resonates with concepts such as self-actualization and the drive for mastery. It invites us to question whether our actions are driven by a desire for control, recognition, or the expression of our deepest values. In a world where technology and artificial intelligence are reshaping the landscape of human potential, the will to power urges us to consider how we can harness these tools to express our creative impulses and affirm our existence. So, let us embrace the challenge of the will to power, not as a justification for domination, but as an invitation to create, to grow, and to affirm our existence in the face of an indifferent universe. Let us ask ourselves, what values do we hold dear, and how can we express them in a world that often seems devoid of meaning? How can we harness the creative potential that lies within each of us to shape a future that is truly our own? In the end, the will to power is a call to embrace the complexity of existence and to affirm our place in the grand tapestry of life.